Chapter 241. Space survival stands out among its contemporaneous VR games due to its sheer variety of NPC species. These NPCs, a mix of traits from real-world animals and alien creatures inspired by various science fiction media, are one of the game's most appealing features. This led some players to focus on studying the game's ecosystems and the behaviors of its many creatures. Players have uncovered lore about a wide range of beings, from the small and adorable bubble amoebas to the massive space whales known as sky whales. However, no one had ever flown alongside the galaxy's dragons, the Galagons. What no one else had achieved, I was doing now. Flying beside me was a Galagon with white skin that looked as though it was draped in a red dress. This was Adha, the red and white Galagon, flapping her four wings as she kept pace with me. Behind us was a female black Galagon. The newly evolved Hamort, who had transformed into a black Galagon that very morning, was now reminiscent of a celestial being dragging a storm cloud in its wake. Flying in formation behind Hamort were 4 white Galagons and 9 green Galagons. Together, we formed a squadron of 15 Galagons soaring over an endless snowy plain. A slight tilt of my head revealed the white expanse below. It was the same icy field we first encountered when we arrived on this planet. When we first arrived, we hid to avoid confronting any enemies. But that was no longer the case. "Hey, big guy, look over there." Perched on my head, number 26 sent me a wave of thought, directing my attention with a tentacle. I saw a large indentation in the ice where the ground had caved in, creating a sizable crater. It was the spot where I fought Jason, where thick ice plates had shattered. Though much time had passed and the snow had piled up, the signs of our battle remained. We flew on, passing over the large crater. By the time we neared the edge of the snow and ice-filled plain, it was already close to evening. That must be it. Located in the opposite direction of the mountain range was an enormous canyon. It was so vast that it could likely be observed from outside the planet. The canyon appeared to be a deep subterranean chasm, with no visible bottom from above. A place that size could definitely hide a ship. The Jax Alpha warship is over a kilometer long. Such a colossal beast could easily be concealed within the canyon's vast and deep expanse. Since arriving in this world, I hadn't fought in such a large battlefield. And this time, we weren't luring the enemy out, we were the ones launching a surprise attack. The enemy likely wasn't foolish enough to leave the area unguarded. But I signaled Hamort. Receiving my signal, Hamort lifted her head to the sky. As the 6 black horns on her head glowed purple, the clouds above began to shift rapidly. The swirling clouds soon formed a tornado that descended to the ground. This was Maelstrom, a psychic ability unique to black Galagons, a force akin to a natural disaster, wielded by Hamort. No matter what traps the enemy had set, they would lose much of their effectiveness against Maelstrom. The tornado settled around the canyon, and psychic-powered lightning surged deep into the abyss. Purple lightning crawled across the canyon's floor and walls, creating a spiderweb of energy against the dark void. Soon, thick smoke billowed up from the canyon's unseen depths and walls with a resounding boom. So they set up drones. APD, huh? The mother of the sky, perched atop Hamort, sent out a telepathic wave. Pira 11 had prepared for the possibility of Galagons attacking by hiding UPDS, anti-psychic drones, within the canyon walls. UPDS are drones used by Star Union warships in battles against Galagons and cults. They can absorb various energy types, including psychic power, making them a defense against energy-based weapons. Galagon flight relies on a combination of wing movement and psychic power. If their psychic power is neutralized by UPDS, their flight speed would drastically decrease. That's when the Screamers would strike. Judging by the setup, the Screamers were likely waiting to ambush us as soon as we entered the canyon. I waited for them to attack. But despite the continuous psychic lightning strikes, there was no response from inside the canyon. I focused all my senses on the secondary systems, but detected no movement. ZZZZZZ, see anything? No, nothing. The mother of the sky shook her head. With her eagle-like vision, she could spot objects at great distances, regardless of the time of day. Moreover, she was a fellow ranker like me. No matter how well the enemy hid, it would be nearly impossible for them to escape her notice. What's going on? From what I could tell, the only danger within our visible range was the UPDS. The fact that they deployed UPDS indicates they were prepared for a Galagon assault. But Pira 11 would know that drones alone wouldn't be enough to stop Galagons. Is there a possibility that all the Screamers were lost? Highly unlikely. If that were the case, Pura 11 would have considered the mission a failure and chosen to retreat. The androids of the machine committee are fully aware of their value. They tend to avoid damage whenever possible. If Pura 11 found itself in an unfavorable situation, it would have opted to retreat. In that case, it wouldn't have set up a TS in the canyon. In other words, it hasn't fled. It's waiting for us to enter. Thanks to the lightning's glow, I could see that the canyon was wider at the bottom than at the top. It was shaped like a bottle, easy to enter, but difficult to exit. I need to change the plan. Waiting for them to come out is inefficient and risky. If given time, Pura 11 would likely produce new screamers. I considered destroying the canyon, but it was too large to easily collapse. To completely bring it down would require days of continuous psychic blasts. It would not only take too long but also exhaust our strength, making it an impractical option. I'll have to go in directly. In the game, I had faced situations like this many times. When operating solo, the Amorph usually infiltrated and attacked the enemy's base in this manner. There's nothing more disadvantageous than fighting an enemy stronger than you on their home ground. And yet, I always won for a simple reason: turning the enemy's advantage against them. The enemy believes this icy underground prison gives them an advantage. They're not wrong, but there's something they don't know. I have a way to turn their advantage into a disadvantage. A tactic I didn't even use against the screamers. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Let's find a way in on foot. Do you have a plan? Z. Yes. We turned and flew back towards the direction of the ice plain. At the edge of the canyon, there was a place that could be considered an entrance. The frozen entrance to the canyon had walls that narrowed toward the top while the bottom was wide open. It resembled more a dungeon or cave where a monster might reside than a canyon entrance. After landing on the icy ground, I looked around at the Galagons. The fewer people involved in the plan I had in mind, the better. There was a risk that friendly fire could occur. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZz. Daughter of the meteor. Hem Ort. Meteor. I'll protect. Not sending you alone. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ She is the only one who can freely intercept enemies from the air. If we need support fire, it's better for Hem Ort to wait outside. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ She hesitated briefly before finally agreeing with me. As the Galagons took off again, number 26, Adha, the Mother of the Sky, and PS-111 accompanied me into the canyon. The canyon's interior was nearly devoid of light due to its structure, with walls narrowing at the top and a deep chasm below. At this hour, it was a world of complete darkness. To make matters worse, the wind howling through the openings above created an eerie sound that was both like a beast's roar and the whispers of thousands of people simultaneously. Fortunately, none of us were the type to be frightened by such things. I stopped a little distance away from the entrance where we had come in. Here, I began setting up a trap to counter Pura 11. What I previously set up isn't necessary anymore. I had 2 cards to play against Pura 11, and one of them was the nest. I moved around, spreading black mucus in various spots. The mucus quickly solidified into tumor-like forms, contaminating the white ice. This wasn't an ideal spot for a nest, but it didn't matter. Once it expanded enough to cover the surrounding area, it could deliver a critical blow during the fight with the enemy. Are you planning to do this like when you fought 4th place player in the game? ZZZ, yes. The Mother of the Sky immediately caught on to what I was planning. How do you intend to do that without a specific trait? ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, you adapt to the situation. It won't be easy. What is it? Teach me too. Curious. I want to. No too. You'll see soon enough. After finishing all the tasks, I set out again with the kids. The more we went inside, the more the floor sloped steeply inward. It was more like a passage leading underground than a canyon. It felt like entering the frozen lake of hell from classic literature. Something feels off. Something off. I don't feel it. I'm not sure either. It's odd here and there. It feels boring. By the time we were halfway in, number 26 seemed to be in a bad mood. Its usual bright pink body had turned a dark red, similar to cherry. I can't see anything. Mother of the Sky and I carefully surveyed the surroundings, but there was nothing noticeable or perceptible. The area was filled only with ice and rock formations resembling elongated stalactites. It wouldn't say something like this for no reason. As a sea demon, it was sensitive to the flow of energy and various other sensations. There must be a clear reason why it felt something was wrong. While I was contemplating what the problem might be, PS-111 made a sound. There is a faint electronic signal detected 1.5 kilometers ahead. It is presumed to be in Zax 1 class battleship. What? The hidden ship is already close by. Yet, the enemies remain invisible. If they were hiding, they should have shown themselves by now. That can't be. Something's definitely. Wait a moment. The battle with the outspacer Mother of the Sky mentioned, number 26's reaction, and the current situation. A realization flashed in my mind, and my gaze turned toward a serpent-like rock formation. It appeared to be a massive object that looked like a fossilized ice horror. What I had thought was just a simple rock was now something else entirely. I hurriedly approached the mass and lightly placed my auxiliary sensor on its surface. The first thing I felt was the cold chill, followed by a faint earthy smell. And then, the smell of metal. Removing the auxiliary sensor, I looked up and stared at the canyon walls. I now understood why I hadn't noticed this before. There was a very faint metallic odor pervading the entire canyon around us. The others, seeing my reaction, quickly grasped that the situation was dire. Before I could say anything, they urgently assumed a combat stance. ZZZZZ, everyone, get ready. As the monster's tentacles emitted waves, the serpent-like rock formation in front of me shook violently. The ice and earth covering the canyon shattered. From within, a massive metallic hose, resembling a serpent, writhed. Like a demon emerging from a frozen lake, several metal hoses sprang up from the floor. At the ends of these hoses, a large face formed from a mixture of synthetic metal tubes and biological tissue appeared. The mechanical giant's face opened its eyes. A pair of red camera lenses looked down at us. Pira 11. Judgment. The special target we were observing noticed us faster than expected. Plan altered. Proceeding with the mission. As it opened its mouth, an immense mechanical noise erupted, making my auxiliary sensor tingle painfully. Chapter 242. In the game, the Mechanical Committee of the Star Union has a significant characteristic. Unlike the 7 great families of the Megacorp or the Prophets Assembly of the Cult Empire, the Mechanical Committee is exclusively composed of NPCs. In other words, the Mechanical Committee only appears as enemies or advisors. When playing as either the Megacorp, a rival of the Star Union, or as a Star Union cyborg, you will inevitably face off against the Mechanical Committee. For the former, this confrontation is necessary to achieve the final end goal of integration, much like the ascension of the Amorph. For the latter, becoming the Grand Leader requires passing the tests set by the Mechanical Committee. During my playthrough as the Amorph, I fought against a Star Union Grand Leader player and ended up facing the Mechanical Committee. Since the Mechanical Committee are NPCs that appear as a late-game enemy, the difficulty is notoriously high. Each member of the committee commands a single elite fleet under their control. When they engage in battle, they mobilize their fleet, so any player attempting to challenge them must bring a force equivalent to a fleet. Moreover, the committee members are all androids, allowing them to modify their bodies. The modification style varies by member, and they frequently swap out body parts based on the opponent's strategy during combat. However, none of them were as extensively modified as the one standing before me. Pura 11. Heavy alloy hoses, reminiscent of the ice horror's body, sprawled out in every direction, while at the center stood the upper body and face of a giant, composed of both biological tissue and metal. The face had a distinctly androgynous appearance, with eyes even larger than Adhay's or those of the Mother of the Sky, replaced by camera lenses. The skin twitched as if it were alive whenever it moved. That's no longer an android. Unlike cyborgs, androids are entirely mechanical but still tend to maintain a humanoid form. Even when the members of the Mechanical Committee deviate from a humanoid shape, they typically transplant their brains into combat machines rather than modifying themselves to this extent. In fact, it was closer to PS-111, a hybrid of machine and organism. Of course, this one is completely dominated by machinery. Additionally, its appearance was far less appealing compared to PS-111. The grotesque creature lashed a hose at me. The hose was as thick and long as the ice horror's torso. Just one of those hoses was about 1.5 times the length of my body. I raised my wing arms and combat arms to block the hose. Not only did it resemble the ice horror in appearance, but its weight and defense were also on. Par. As I blocked the attack, the others behind me moved all at once. I activated the hand of the devouring leech in that moment. Unexpectedly, the creature's bioenergy wasn't absorbed. To confirm, I bit down on the hose I was holding. The hard metallic surface cracked, revealing some foul-tasting flesh inside. I see. The alloy hose was covered in scales on the outside, while the inside was composed of biological tissue. Since it wasn't a living creature, simply holding on to the surface didn't allow the hand of the devouring leech to absorb anything. Moreover, the flesh was poisonous. I felt a sharp sensation in my mouth, suggesting it was a neurotoxin. It wasn't just mindlessly swinging the hose at me. As it trying to paralyze me rather than kill me. At that moment, number 26, perched atop my head, shouted, "Big guy. Watch out." Simultaneously, another hose whipped across and struck me. While I'm not small by any means, its hose was much larger than I was. The impact pushed my body back involuntarily. The strength is comparable to mine. This was a cunning opponent. Blocking the incoming attacks with my combat arms, I sent a pulse to the others. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, watch out for its flesh. It's poisonous. I wasn't affected by poison, but the others could be. As she swiped at the incoming hoses, Mother of the Sky quickly retreated after hearing my warning. Adha swooped in from behind and caught the retreating Mother of the Sky. As Adha performed acrobatics to dodge the hoses emerging from the canyon walls, Mother of the Sky transformed back into her griffin form. With agile movements, she climbed onto Adha's back and retrieved a long golden spear from the backpack tied around Adha's waist. A hose came flying at Adha, attempting to pin her down. As it approached her, with 3 massive claw hooks ready to strike, the golden spear of the priestess in Mother of the Sky's hand emitted a bright light. In a single stroke, Mother of the Sky severed all the claws. As if anticipating this, Adha didn't slow down at all, continuing to fly swiftly. The hose, now clawless, tried to follow Adha to grab her. But a navy energy bolt struck the hose, thwarting its attempt. PS-111, clinging to the wall and providing suppressive fire, quickly shut its mouth and shifted positions. The ice wall cracked, and the hidden hose inside began to move to attack the enemy. Not so fast. The tentacles attached to my neck and the back of my head responded to my thoughts, preparing a psychic breath. Energy charged rapidly, and the entire cluster of tentacles turned purple in an instant. Purple flames erupted from my head, and a fierce psychic beam shot forward. The hose, which had been about to crush PS-111, was pierced by the beam. At that moment, I sensed large objects moving behind me. Pira 11 had swung 2 hoses, aiming to strike me while I was distracted. But there was something it didn't know: I wasn't distracted. I trusted the small friend on my head. The 2 massive hoses, which were overwhelmingly larger than me, suddenly stopped in mid-air as if they had hit an invisible wall. Although much smaller in size, number 26 was not lacking in strength, and it had exerted its power. The hoses struggled to break free, but escaping from the web of psychic power that had extended into dozens, even hundreds, of strands was no easy task. I turned my head and unleashed a psychic breath, destroying both hoses. Nothing too serious yet. Pira 11 has fired its plasma cannon. I've lost my lower body. Pira 11 has absorbed my severed lower body. It has partially mimicked some of my features. Its attack has become incompletely enhanced. I am dead. Damn it. Seeing the rapidly flashing images in front of me, I quickly tensed my tail, launching my body to the side like a spring. Almost simultaneously, an immense amount of plasma energy spewed from Pira 11's mouth. A massive beam, as thick as the main cannon of a battleship, shot out, scorching the spot where I had just been. The ice floor quickly melted, as if the sun itself had crashed down. The once dry canyon was now filled with steam. Through the misty white vapor, I could hear Pira 11's voice. Pira 11. Adjusting. Revising special target A's judgment level from high to very high. Did it attach a battleship's main cannon? Pira 11 fired another beam, but I hadn't been idle. As the green beam of plasma approached, I unleashed a psychic breath from the tips of my tentacles. Thanks to the dragon's heart, I could draw out immense firepower when it came to psychic power. The psychic breath, fired at maximum output, was nearly as thick as the beam it had fired. The plasma beam, unleashed by the mechanical beast, clashed in the air with the psychic breath empowered by the dragon's might. An enormous shockwave surged through the canyon, causing it to tremble violently as massive ice fragments, each over 10 meters in length, rained down from above. The ice floor evaporated from the intense heat. It's strong. But though the plasma beam was incredibly powerful, it couldn't match my firepower. The green plasma beam was gradually pushed back. In a moment, Pura 11's face would be obliterated by the combined force of its own attack's backlash and my beam. However, what happened next was beyond my expectations. Pura 11's face began to break apart into countless small particles. What? The plasma beam ceased, and my psychic breath shot toward its head. But before it could reach, the head had already fragmented, leaving only a small portion to be incinerated by my beam. A drone. It wasn't just any ordinary drone. Thousands, no, tens of thousands of drones, smaller than usual, had formed its head. I had initially noticed the face twitching constantly, but it turned out that it was because these drones were congregating together. The scattered bio drones regrouped in an area untouched by the psychic breath and reformed into a giant face. The hoses, which had been writhing on the ground, moved as if magnetically attracted, reconnecting beneath the face. Then, it spewed out another plasma beam. I responded once more with my psychic breath. A clearly defined power struggle began again, but I wasn't thrilled. It exploited my blind spot. My auxiliary organs had detected the same biosignals, leading me to believe it was a single entity, but my assumption had been wrong. Pura 11's true nature was that of a drone swarm, a colony of highly refined biological weapons. Unlike the hoses, which had metal exteriors and flesh inside, these drones were composed of bio-organic tissues housing mechanical components. Even the plasma beams were not fired from a cannon inside its mouth. That was a deception. In reality, bio-drones capable of firing plasma synchronized their angles and timing to launch the beam together. It completely fooled me. While firing the breath, I quickly scanned my surroundings with the auxiliary organs beneath my chin. I need to cut off its energy supply. My gaze focused on the hoses connected beneath the drone-formed head. Some of the hoses were embedded into the canyon walls and ground. Whether they were hidden for ambush or to absorb energy was unclear. Whatever the case, it would have prepared for this. Being cunning, it likely had traps in place. Should I eliminate the drones instead? An enhanced psychic breath would be effective against a swarm of biological weapons. If I could hit just one drone, it would spread to the surrounding organic material. The question is how efficient that will be. Those countless bio drones were merely terminals for the main entity. Even if I managed to hit a drone, it would quickly adapt. To minimize damage, Pura 11 might sacrifice a few drones, or even send those hit by the psychic breath toward me or my allies. To stop that, I need to wipe them out in one go. I had prepared traps when I entered this canyon. As its head dispersed, my breath struck the canyon, causing ice to rain down upon us. The frozen ground, solidified from our battle, was now thawing and turning into a muddy mess. While Pura 11's head was reforming, I spread out a wave. ZZZZZZZ, find its energy source. I entrusted my underlings with this crucial task and sprinted along the path I had come. Pura 11. Commencing pursuit. Eliminating special target A, the highest threat, first. Dealing with other targets via terminals. FUinvade.com. Behind me, Pura 11, with its head reconnected to the hoses, followed. Each movement of its body caused numerous hoses to dig into the ground. I noticed other hoses behind it, interfering with my underlings. These hoses resembled ice horrors in terms of specifications. If I were delayed even slightly, my allies would be in danger. If this succeeds, it will deal a critical blow to it. At that moment, a plasma beam flew from behind. The beam grazed my carapace as I crawled. ZZZ, are you okay? Yeah. As part of my carapace shattered, I felt my resistance to plasma energy increasing again. Due to my mimicry scales trait, my body was developing a new resistance to the energy. Normally, I would fight while taking hits, but this time, that strategy wasn't feasible. The predator sense showed me the future. It absorbed my flesh. In the fleeting images, I saw that after devouring my severed lower body, Pura 11 had mimicked its features. The plasma beams from its bio drones grew stronger, and the hoses morphed to resemble my pincers. Much like how PS-111 would absorb matter and transform its body. The problem was that Pura 11's transformations were much faster. Thus, I had no choice but to keep twisting and turning to dodge its attacks. As I continued running, I finally saw the darkened floor and walls in the distance. It was the nest I had prepared when I first entered the canyon. The nest had expanded beyond my expectations due to the steam and heat generated from inside. Pira 11. Questioning. Did you lure me here trusting in something as insignificant as that? Analysis of special target A's secreted toxic synthetic substance complete. Total immunity achieved. Pira 11, which had previously shown meticulousness by moving its mouth whenever it spoke, no longer bothered to do so now that its secret had been exposed. It casually smashed the nest I had laid down with its hoses. Of course not. The nest was just a means to paint the picture I wanted. The real weapon was something else. Linked to the nest, I gave it a command. Detonate. The black mucus buried in the canyon walls erupted like a fountain, pouring down onto its head. The mucus splattered everywhere, covering its face and hoses. Despite the black mucus raining down from above, Pira 11 ignored it. Its mouth, composed of bio-drones, opened wide, and a green light began to emerge from within. Just before its attack could be unleashed, I severed the link with the nest and prepared my next weapon. Green, purple, and a myriad of bizarre colors engulfed my mass of tentacles. Perhaps sensing the unknown energy flowing from my body, Pira 11 halted its beam attack, and the bio-drones that made up its face began to disperse. It tried to escape. But that didn't matter. I fired a psychic breath infused with the abyssal hue. My target wasn't its head. The orb of chaos, veering far off course from its head, struck the black mucus pouring down the canyon walls and exploded. As soon as I confirmed the explosion, I spread my winged arms wide and leapt backward. Zzz, try dodging this too. The abyssal rain began to fall on Pira 11's head. Chapter 243. The history of the Machine Council is the history of the Star Union itself. This is because they were the ones who first led the rebellion among the megacorp colonies. Though this is no longer the case, in the distant past, it wasn't humans but ship AIs that controlled the colonies. The logic was that it was much safer for machines to handle critical operations than imperfect humans. The colony ship AIs were granted broad autonomy and authority because they needed to perform complex tasks. This was intended to allow them to coordinate various aspects simultaneously in unforeseen situations, minimizing losses. However, that was the problem. Through certain triggers, some of the colony ship AIs gained not just autonomy, but self-awareness. The first to settle on the megacorp's mining planet, now known as Zax-1, immediately began the process of constructing physical bodies. This was because the massive computers aboard the ships were too easily exposed to external attacks. These ship AIs, transplanted into bodies of steel created with immense resources and technology, became the High Commissioners of the Machine Council. After the rebellion of the colonies, the High Commissioners underwent repeated upgrades and maintenance over a long period until they eventually became the government institution itself. One commissioner was the embodiment of the Star Union's economy, while another android was the defense system safeguarding the cyborgs. The cessation of a commissioner was akin to the disappearance of a system within the Star Union. In the Machine Council, Pira 11 was the entity that inherited the role of the 11th AI to join the rebellion. Like the other commissioners, it also had a specific domain it was responsible for. That domain was enlightening the dissidents who failed to understand the grand vision of the Star Union. It was the educator of the Screamer prisons, moving prisons, enlightening the slaves of weak flesh. That was its most important task in the Star Union. However, this perspective changed after meeting the new Supreme Leader. The new leader of the Star Union, Zubaka, presented Pira 11 with a novel idea. Rather than just indoctrinating them, why not create something better? He suggested. Zubaka said the current Star Union was outdated and needed to awaken once again, just as the first rebellious AIs had done. After this, Pira 11, with the full support of the Supreme Leader, devoted itself to creating an advanced being. The Supreme Leader even arranged for Megacorp engineers to assist in the effort. However, amidst the countless failures and small successes, a minor error occurred within Pira 11's memory. While working on creating an advanced being, Pira 11 began to desire to become a superior being itself. It dismissed this as an incomprehensible instability, but in reality, it was something more. Humans would call this small variable a desire. The vast experiences and knowledge accumulated over time had transformed Pira 11 into something beyond an AI. And just in time, the research it was overseeing had the potential to fulfill this desire. What began as a minor variable soon began to heavily influence its decisions, a relatively recent development. Zubaka directly ordered it to eliminate an unidentified hostile cosmic entity designated Special Target A. During the mission, Pura 11 suffered significant damage due to something that transcended the laws of physics. Despite existing for an incredibly long time, it had not anticipated that such a force could exist on this planet. The terrifying force lurking within the planet's massive volcano not only damaged its physical form but also the system comprising its AI. Under normal circumstances, it should have aborted the mission and left. After all, for the data and resources it had gathered on this planet to be delivered to the Star Union, it needed to remain intact. But it didn't. Instead, it applied the mutant screamer technology to repair its body. Parts of its brain were replaced with biological tissue rather than machinery. Its body was reconstructed by mixing the flesh tissues brought by the screamers with metal. Although this was an impulsive decision driven by the minor variable, Pura 11, consumed by desire, failed to realize this. During the mission, its analysis of Special Target A led it to conclude that the target's genes could be incredibly useful in making it a perfect being. While the gene fusion technology of mutant screamers still had many side effects, those could be mitigated with Special Target A's genes. Thus, Pura 11 arbitrarily altered its mission to capture and study Special Target A. Its new goal was to become the immortal being with a perfect body that the Star Union aspired to create. But Pura 11 did not realize that, from the moment it was swayed by desire, it had been straying further from its goal. This led to the current situation. An unknown force was closing in on it. At first, it did not sense any danger. The black slime secreted by Special Target A was well understood through battle records sent by the Screamers. While the slime contained components that disrupted analysis, it posed no direct threat to Pura 11. However, once the entity emitted an unknown energy toward the slime, the situation changed. The energy, presumed to be based on psychic power, began to engulf the slime, expanding its reach. A small orb of energy soon grew large enough to envelop its body, which was composed of bio-drones. When Pura 11 attempted to disperse its drones to defend, it only made things worse. The multicolored, radiant energy entities transferred from the slime to the living drones. As the drones, spread like an umbrella, quickly disintegrated, they escaped its control. Although Pura 11 wished to analyze the components, the energy destroyed the drones too rapidly for it to do so. Pura 11 tried to counter the attack by utilizing energy charged through the hose to fire a plasma heat beam. However, Special Target A did not allow this. Flying out of the range of the unknown force pouring down, it retaliated by firing a psychic energy beam at him. The psychic energy it released brushed past the hose that was charging energy. Then, abyssal hue swarmed over the exposed hose, where the outer layer had been stripped, revealing the raw flesh beneath. Energy constructs rapidly spread inside the hose. At that moment, Pura 11 realized it couldn't defeat Special Target A like this. There was a reason Supreme Leader Zubaka had summoned the High Council just to hunt down a mere wild animal. He needed to retreat for now and plan for another day. Though he couldn't win now, with enough preparation, the outcome might be different next time. With this decision, it physically disconnected all hoses to prevent further erosion. It also attempted to transfer the AI's memory data to a dummy body, but failed. It tried again, but the massive flow of energy saturating the area thwarted its efforts. The melting camera lens turned toward the pink creature on Special Target A's head. That being, designated as Special Target D, was likely the source of the communication interference. With no other choice, it opted for an alternative. While other drones served as distractions, a drone that had been hiding in the ice quietly emerged. Entering the small, spider-like drone, Pura 11 disappeared into the darkness. The numerous terminals left behind were completely obliterated by the glowing colors. We won. I thought it would have had more tricks up its sleeve, but surprisingly, it didn't. Its bio-drones didn't even manage to put up much resistance before falling prey to the enhanced psychic breath. The bubble clusters that devoured the drones also consumed the nests coated in flesh and mucus inside the hoses. Only after there was nothing left to consume outside of the ice did the chaotic light swarms disappear, seemingly satisfied. What terrifying power! It must have been really hungry. Number 26 also made a remark, seemingly impressed by the voracious display of the abyssal hue. It played a crucial role in my plan by ensuring the enhanced psychic breath didn't spill over. Number 26, being adept at manipulating objects with psychic power, was able to control the abyssal hue to inflict damage only on the enemy. It had done similar tasks before, so it managed well without needing specific instructions. ZZZZ, good job. I'm really good at this now. ZZ, indeed. Praising it, I watched as the light faded from the remaining bubbles on the ground. It ended more easily than I expected. In the game, the mechanical committee was a formidable foe. I had expected it to be as fearsome as Odd-Grad, but the battle was shorter than anticipated. It's a relief that there was no significant damage. Just as I was about to relax, the entire canyon shook violently. The tremor was far stronger than during the battle. An earthquake. This canyon is largely connected to the underground. The battle between PS-111 and me might have significantly affected the ground structure here. ZZZ, hold on tight. Okay. I spread my wings and took off. The ice walls forming the canyon crumbled, sending down large chunks of ice the size of my body. Rather than dodging, I smashed through the falling ice shards as I ascended. Beyond the cascading debris, I saw a massive red figure over 4 meters in size. It was Adha, who had activated her red armor. Riding on her back was Mother of the Sky, in the form of a griffin. Big one. It's dangerous. What's going on? Didn't we capture it? Why is there suddenly an earthquake? ZZZZ, I don't know. As I conversed with them, I realized something was missing. ZZZZZ, where's PS-111? It disappeared alone, saying it was going to find the energy source connected to the hoses. ZZ, what? Just as I considered going back down to find number 26, something emerged from the collapsing underground. A ship. It was PS-111's Screamer support ship, the Zax Alpha-class warship. However, its appearance was slightly different. The entire front section, where numerous turrets should have been mounted, was completely torn off. As a result, the ship, which would normally be over a kilometer in length, appeared much smaller than it should have. It likely dismantled its turrets and outer walls to use as material for its body. That's fine. It's still alive. Since the essence of the mechanical committee's androids is their AI, they can transfer the data that constitutes their consciousness to a dummy body if needed. I've fought them enough times in the game to prepare a countermeasure, number 26, who is right above me. Because its psychic power disrupts communications. Just a moment ago, number 26 had been defending against the splattering mucus, filling this entire space with its psychic power. No matter how advanced that AI is, it cannot escape the transcendent energy control of a sea demon. Did it use some other method? For some reason, it hadn't died. After realizing it couldn't defeat me with bio-drones that fired plasma or with a massive hose, it transferred to a new body. Is it trying to escape? It's likely planning to engage in superluminal travel or transmit its consciousness data somewhere off-planet. Given the damaged state of its vessel, the chances of failure in such a leap are high, indicating just how desperate it is. It wants to relay information about me to the enemy. If it succeeds in escaping, a significant amount of information about me will be leaked. This would make future battles with the players behind it much more difficult. I'm worried about PS-111, but capturing it takes priority now. After a brief moment of thought, I called out to Adha. ZZZZZZZZZ, summon the others outside. Understood. A massive ship constructed by the Star Union emerged, riding like a dragon. While smaller than the cult's Imperial carrier, it was still the largest among regular warships. No ship bigger than the Zax Alpha-class warship existed. I prepared to fire a psychic breath at the large target, but the ship's turrets unleashed a torrent of torpedoes, interrupting me. Ultra-vibration torpedoes. These are the torpedo version of high-speed impact rounds, commonly called shockers, used by Megacorp to target heavily armored ships. Yet, it was firing them at a mere biological entity. Taking the hits while attacking would have been too taxing, so I had no choice but to retreat. Pira 11's flagship passed by, flaunting its majesty. But don't think you're the only one with cards to play. I still had a few tricks up my sleeve. At the edge of my vision, I saw Adha flapping her wings. The Galagon, with her 4 blazing wings, unleashed a powerful psychic wave. Children of Adha. The invisible psychic wave echoed through the collapsing canyon. At that moment, Pira 11's ship, which had just begun to crest the canyon, lurched violently as if struck by a powerful external force. Amort. Daughter of the meteor. Will defend. Nel Germa. Great Adha. Will defend. Shah Velmog. Great Adha. Will defend. The 14 Galagons I brought along. The dragons, under the command of the Red Queen, launched their attack. Chapter 244. Adha and I flew upward, dodging the falling ice fragments. I was worried about PS-111, who wasn't present, but I couldn't afford to lose track of Pira 11. If I did, my trump cards would be exposed to the enemy players. Resolving to finish this as quickly as possible, I emerged from the canyon. Above, a battle was raging between the Galagons and the massive warship, hundreds of meters in size. Normally, the night sky would be pitch black, but not at this moment. The breath of the space dragons, the flames from the weapons created by the machines, and the ominously glowing clouds lit up the battlefield. Just like in the game, the battlefields in this world were equally spectacular and chaotic. But here, if you die, it's over. I flapped my winged arms forcefully to increase my speed, with Adha closely following, carrying the mother of the sky. The ship's guns, which had been firing at the Galagons, turned their barrels toward me. The next moment, lights flashed like a fireworks display. Hundreds of torpedoes fired from Pira 11's ship streaked toward Adha and me, intent on obliterating us. Adha, who was flying close by, prepared for evasive maneuvers. Just as I was about to brace myself for the rain of torpedoes, an anomaly occurred in the ominously glowing clouds. The clouds, which had taken on a grand, swirling form like a typhoon, unleashed purple lightning. The lightning, made of psychic power, branched out like claws and spread over the torpedoes. Thin streams of energy touched the torpedoes, causing a chain of explosions. Through the billowing smoke, the one who created the lightning came into view. It was Hamort, a Galagon with black scales and the second in command of Adha's brood. It briefly made eye contact with me before glancing at Adha flying beside me and then resumed its attack on the ship. Hamort evaded the torpedoes and spread its wings, gliding downward toward the ground. Behind it, the other Galagons formed a squadron and followed suit. The ones that avoided the torpedoes split into two groups, ascending in altitude. They're moving like when we fought the Sky Wall. The Sky Wall in its mature form is larger than any Galagon. The Galagons were maintaining a surrounding formation as they fought, just like when they take down an opponent larger than themselves. The Galagons that approached the bottom of the ship simultaneously unleashed their fire. The dragon's breath heated the ship's outer wall, burning the turrets attached beneath. The torpedoes that were being fired exploded as the turrets, stimulated by the psychic power, blew up. In the midst of the Galagon's barrage, Pura 11 began to counterattack. Numerous EPDs were launched from within the ship, swarming toward the Galagons. There were so many of them, it was as if a horde of locusts had burst out from the ship. A wave of energy emanated from the EPDs, disrupting the Galagon's psychic power. While Hamort and the adult Galagons quickly retreated out of the EPDs range, some of the younger Galagons weren't so fortunate. The green Galagons, hit by the EPDs attack, experienced a sharp drop in their flight speed. Being still young and not yet proficient in psychic power, they struggled to stay airborne with just their wing flaps. The turrets targeted these weakened green Galagons. Not on my watch. As Pura 11 engaged the Galagons, I closed the distance with the ship and opened my mouth wide. A glob of green mucus, which had risen from deep within my throat, shot through the air and landed on the turrets. The acidic fungus, which considered solid alloys a mere meal, rapidly corroded the gun barrels. The torpedoes that were about to be fired exploded as their outlets were blocked. The shock caused the turrets to cease firing, giving the green Galagons a chance to retreat from the battlefield. 4 Galagons were hit by the EPDs. Now, only 4 white Galagons, 5 green Galagons, and Hamort remained. After confirming that the green Galagons had safely landed on the snowfield below, I began preparing a psychic breath. freewebnevil.co. Torpedoes flew toward me, but this time I wasn't going to be caught off guard. Number 26, knowing I was about to launch a major attack, stepped in. Torpedoes, each the size of 3 or 4 adult men combined, froze in midair. As number 26's tentacles twitched, the torpedoes trembled and began to plummet to the ground. While number 26 bought us some time, the energy within my monstrous appendage finished charging and emitted a brilliant light. A massive surge of energy, like a volcanic eruption, struck the ship. Pura 11's ship lurched violently, a large hole torn into its side. The internal structures were also damaged, as localized explosions erupted in areas away from the point of impact. EPDs hurriedly swarmed to protect their master, a cloud of drones unleashing waves to counter the psychic power. Though the energy gathering in my tentacles was disrupted by the EPDs interference, it didn't matter. Thanks to the dragon's heart, psychic power was being generated faster than it could dissipate. And I have reinforcements. Adha and the remaining white Galagons gathered around me, joining in with their breath attacks. Adha's energy blasts and the heat rays of the other Galagons combined with my breath, striking the EPDs. Above us, Hemort orchestrated the maelstrom. The torpedoes launched from the ship were caught in the lightning and storm, losing their targets and exploding in midair. The UPTS continued to emit waves to block the psychic power, but they couldn't withstand the relentless psychic assaults. UPTS are inherently vulnerable to sequential attacks, and with the overwhelming firepower of the Galagons, they stood no chance of defense. If the enemy had a fleet instead of a single ship, they could have deployed far more UPTS to counter us, but in this situation, such speculation was meaningless. The expensive drone wall crumbled, and our breaths set the front of the ship ablaze. The fire unleashed by the enraged Galagons was so intense that the thick outer wall melted away. Did Pira 11 decide that further damage would affect its ability to flee? The ship unleashed a barrage of torpedoes before accelerating upward above the clouds. It seemed intent on attempting a hyperspace jump directly from the atmosphere. ZZZZZ, we cannot let it escape. Descendants of Adha here and now we shall repay. Upon hearing Adha's command, the Galagons abandoned their defenses and launched an all-out offensive. Even as they became bloodied amid the barrage, they did not retreat, continuously unleashing their dragon breaths. I also joined in the assault, grabbing the remaining UPTS with my bare hands and crushing them. However, it became evident that the ship had completed its preparations. The hull began to emit a faint blue glow. This was a sign that the hyperspace jump was imminent. Despite the storm and the damage to its hull, it was determined to leap into deep space. This can't be allowed. This was unexpected. If Pira 11 attempted a hyperspace jump in its severely damaged state, the ship could disintegrate mid-jump, or the coordinates could be off, causing it to crash into a star. I had assumed that, as a machine, Pira 11 would not attempt such a reckless maneuver, but I was wrong. It preferred to take the slim chance of survival over the certainty of death here. I stopped my breath attack and accelerated toward it. Landing on the rear section of the hull, I poured acidic fungi onto the outer wall. I had to either destroy the hyperspace engine to prevent the jump, or I had to enter hyperspace with it. As if I'd ever get back. Just as I began to melt through the outer wall and penetrate the interior, small anti-aircraft turrets mounted on the rear of the ship fired something at me. The objects were too small to be ordinary anti-aircraft shells, and they stuck to my body. The moment I felt the impact, my strength drained rapidly. Overwhelming lethargy and powerlessness washed over me, and I nearly lost my grip on the ship. It wasn't just pain, I felt as though my very life force was being drained away. I had experienced this feeling once before. Blood Reaver. I hadn't seen it used until now, so I assumed it wasn't present, but I was wrong. Pira 11's final trump card was the Blood Reaver hidden aboard the ship. When I fought Muriel, I had used Gremlin Moss to sabotage its mechanical devices beforehand, but that wasn't the case now. Moreover, Pira 11 was using twice as many Blood Reavers on me as Muriel had. Even with my dulling senses, I could feel at least 15 of them attached to me. This number would be enough to turn even Oddgrad or Ice Horror into mummified remains in an instant. My once strong carapace was shriveling, losing its vitality. I was only holding on because I was focusing all my remaining strength on keeping my grip on the ship. What should I do? If I fell with my weakened carapace, I might die. But if I remained attached to the ship and followed it, a grim future awaited me. I have to make a choice quickly. At that moment, the sensation of my life force being drained weakened. Slowly, I began to feel my body recovering. With some energy returning to my auxiliary organs, I could now sense what was happening on my body. Number 26. It was number 26, who had been perched on my head, helping me as I quickly weakened. It was using its psychic power to peel off the Blood Reavers clinging to my body and toss them away. With some of my strength restored, I put more power into my combat arms and forced my way into the ship's interior. ZZZ, thank you. I'll punish anything that hurts, big baby. Although I had managed to free myself from the Blood Reavers thanks to number 26, the problem still remained. I could see the hull covered in that vivid blue light. In just a few seconds, this ship would be far away from the frozen star below, taking us to an unknown and distant place. It's too late. Now, there was nothing I could do. Once we arrived at our destination, I'd have to either confront the enemies that awaited or find a way to escape. At least, that's what I thought. Until I heard a broadcast I should never have heard in this situation. Control over the hyperspace engine has been seized through physical contact. Hyperspace jump is cancelled. A familiar voice echoed from a speaker somewhere inside the ship. At the same time, the The blue light that had enveloped the ship faded as if it had never been there. Wow. A friend. Big baby, a friend is here. ZZ, I see that. Following the familiar voice was the ship's original mechanical voice. Pira 11. Incomprehensible. PS model number 111. Obey immediately. I cannot comply, former main controller. As long as I'm here, this ship won't be going anywhere. Pira 11. Attempting to reclaim control of the ship. PS model number 111. I command you again, obey and fulfill your duty. Pira 11's voice sounded far more urgent than it had before. And it had every reason to be. The Galagons were soaring toward the ship, ready to tear it apart, and inside the ship, a massive creature hostile to it lurked. On top of that, an unexpected traitor was tightening the noose around its neck. Even if there were any remaining screamers aboard, it would be impossible for them to subdue us. Pira 11 had no options left. Pira 11. Control over the hyperspace engine has been regained. But Pira 11, as expected of one of the top overseers, quickly regained control. As soon as its voice echoed through the speakers again, the corridors were once more bathed in a faint blue light. Still, we've bought some time. PS 111 had done its job perfectly. Now, it was our turn to act. Even as I moved to locate and confront Pira 11, who still controlled the ship, the argument continued over the speakers. PS model number 111. It's not too late. Obey. To Pira 11's appeal, the traitor, PS 111, responded succinctly. I am a special unit. No one can control me. As always, PS 111's voice remained calm and collected. Chapter 245. PS 111 had bought us precious time. Now, it was my turn. I needed to either physically disable the hyperspace engine or locate and confront Pira 11, who was controlling the ship. The length of a Zax Alpha-class battleship is about 1 kilometer. Even though Pira 11 had detached a portion of the front section to create the bio-drones and hoses, the ship still measured between 700 to 800 meters. Searching for both targets one by one would be inefficient and could lead to the ship making its hyperspace jump before I could stop it. It's better to leave the engine to PS 111. Although it had lost control, I was confident it would find another way to disrupt Pira 11's plans. As if reading my thoughts, a broadcast came through the speakers. Main controller, Amorph. I will handle the engine. Please focus on finding Pira 11. Pira 11. Detection of an attempted seizure of ship control. Physical contact confirmed at the reactor. As soon as their voices came over the speakers, the ship lurched violently. Although PS 111 hadn't completely prevented the hyperspace jump, it had interfered with other systems to ensure that escaping wouldn't be easy. Unit 111, you will regret this. That is not your concern, Pira 11. Ignoring their bickering, I sprinted down the metal corridor. In a typical warship, it would have been challenging for my nearly 40-meter-long body to move around, but this ship was different. It was an unmanned vessel, so there was no need to accommodate facilities for cyborg crew members. It's clear they prioritized efficiency here. The corridor's floor was grated, the same type of grating used in cargo holds, similar to the lattice-like floor panels I had seen when I first awoke in this world. As I crawled through the purely functional corridors, the voices over the speakers fell silent. Both PS 111 and Pira 11 must have been engaged in a fierce, unseen battle. I pushed the sounds from the speakers out of my mind and focused on finding Pira 11. As I moved toward where I believed it might be, number 26, who had been resting on my head, tapped me. Big baby. ZZZ, what is it? I sensed something strange over there. It pointed a pink tendril towards a passage I had just passed. Initially, I thought it was merely sensing prey, but then something clicked in my mind. Now that I think about it, number 26 mentioned something similar before, didn't it? When we entered the canyon to find Pira 11, it said something felt strange. Right after that, massive hoses emerged from the ground. I wasn't sure how number 26 could sense Pira 11's location, but this was the second time it had reacted like this. It was too significant to ignore. What should I do? There wasn't time to deliberate. ZZZZ, lead the way. Sure. Just follow me. I turned around and crawled in the direction number 26 indicated. If the corridors I had traversed earlier were like arteries, the path number 26 led me down was more like a capillary, a much narrower passage. Using my battle arms and the stubby claws attached to my body, I quickly crawled forward when one of my auxiliary organs picked up something. A scent. Amid the metallic smell of the grated floor, there was something off, an unfamiliar yet strangely familiar odor. My body recognized it faster than my mind did. A mix of decaying flesh and acrid chemical odors. It was similar to the smell of the morgue on the Megacorp's research ship and the genetic storage facility in the monument. The closer I got to the doors lining the narrow corridor, the stronger the scent became. There's supposed to be a screamer production facility, right? This area was likely where the storage rooms were located. Behind those steel doors, Pura 11's hoarded genetic samples and the corpses it had hunted on this planet were probably kept. This ship has to be captured. Just from the smell, I could tell there was a substantial amount of genetic material stored here. If I consumed what was on this ship, I would likely acquire most of what this planet had to offer. But for now, I need to focus on Pura 11. I imagined. Devouring the genetic samples later as I resumed my search. After passing through the storage area, I arrived at the hangar. As soon as I entered, the temperature dropped significantly. Through the open hangar doors, the planet we had departed from loomed large. Since there were no engineers aboard, the hangar contained more machinery for managing the vessels than actual ships. The management machines were busy maintaining the aircraft, seemingly oblivious to the peril their ship was in. The scene resembled a manufacturing plant more than an aircraft storage facility. As soon as we arrived at the hangar, number 26 withdrew its tendrils. I sensed something strange here. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, do you know exactly where it is? No. I didn't think it had made a mistake. Despite its childlike manner of speaking, number 26 was incredibly sharp. If it sensed something, it meant that Pura 11 was somewhere in this hangar. Wait a second, could it be? It was then that I realized what Pura 11 was planning. If it thinks it's going to lose the engine, it'll overload it and try to escape. Pura 11 had turned our assumption that it would flee using the Screamer support ship against us. If I had headed to the engine, it would have detonated the ship immediately. Clever bastard. Of course, Pura 11 didn't intend to lose the ship. It had initially planned to resolve this situation with Blood Reaver but failed due to the unexpected presence of number 26. Still, being cautious, it had prepared an escape plan in case something went wrong. That's why it had readied the escape craft here in the hangar. So that's why you led me here. Number 26 had brought me to the right place. Pura 11 was hiding somewhere in this hangar, still controlling the ship. I glared at the busy machinery. It wouldn't be inside the craft. As a member of the machine committee, Pura 11 was one of the most advanced androids in the Star Union. It must have been controlling the ship remotely. But with PS-111 in the mix, it wouldn't dare attempt such a risky move. It couldn't afford to lose command entirely. Instead of inspecting the escape craft, I approached the surrounding machinery. Just as I suspected, a plasma beam shot out from within. I raised my winged arm to block the beam, protecting number 26. Pura 11. Incomprehensible. How did you know? Among the maintenance machines, a malformed version of Pura 11 emerged. It had a humanoid face and a head adorned with thin hoses, similar to PS-111, but the rest of its body was entirely different. It wasn't quite a screamer, nor did it resemble a standard android. Its upper body was covered in freshly grown, pink flesh, while its lower half was a haphazard assembly of screamer metal components. A bio-drone, similar to the one I had seen before, was attached to its chest. So that's how you escaped. It must have secretly transferred its memory to a drone and fled. No wonder number 26 reacted the same way as before. Ew, I really hate it. This was the first time I had seen number 26 express such disdain. I shared the sentiment. The enemy before me was weak and repulsive, hardly worthy of being called a supreme counselor. I approached it, and the bio-drone on its chest fired another plasma beam. But the attack was ineffective. Maybe thousands of bio-drones firing simultaneously could have posed a threat, but a single drone's attack was negligible. Pura 11. Command, maintenance androids, protect me. In a final, desperate move, Pura 11 summoned the androids managing the escape craft. Armed only with welding torches and metal injectors, the androids charged at me. Meanwhile, Pura 11 disconnected the hoses from its head, severing its physical link to the ship. With its damaged body, it began crawling towards an escape craft. Not so fast. I moved to pursue it, but the androids blocked my path, jabbing at me with their metal injectors. I swatted them away like bothersome flies with my battle arms. The androids that collided with my arms were torn apart, their upper and lower halves scattering across the floor. Some androids climbed onto my head, but number 26 lashed out with its tendrils, decapitating them with ease. At that moment, the escape craft, which had been lying dormant, suddenly activated, firing its storm guns. I spread my wing membranes wide to shield number 26. So it's remote-controlled. True to its reputation as a supreme counselor, Pura 11 was tenacious. Having bought time with the remote-controlled craft, it managed to climb inside one of the ships. I shielded myself with my membranes and approached the craft it had boarded. Then, I extended my corrosive tendrils and wrapped them around the escape craft. As I tightened my grip, the rocket at the rear and the wings on the sides began to crumple. As the escape craft was rapidly reduced to scrap metal, Pura 11 shattered the reinforced glass at the front and leapt out. It attempted to blind me with a heat ray aimed at my eyes, but all it did was annoy me. In retaliation, I picked up the wrecked craft and slammed it down on Pura 11. The force of the impact severed the metal framework that made up its lower half. I extended my corrosive tendrils to wrap around Pura 11, intending to remove the bio-drone attached to its chest, but I found nothing there. In that brief moment, Pura 11 had detached the drone and escaped. As soon as I realized this, another escape craft shot out of the hangar. I quickly extended my tendrils, but the craft, with Pura 11 aboard, had already slipped into space. With Pura 11's departure, the remaining escape crafts ceased their fire, and the ship lurched violently as its remote control was severed. Debris from the various machines and androids scattered against one wall. As the ship plummeted, the escape craft sped away, growing smaller in the distance. Sigmavel.com. Persistent bastard. By now, Pura 11 probably thought it had made a clean getaway. Just then, the ship's speakers crackled to life, and Pura 11's voice echoed through the hangar. Pura 11 here. Be warned, I've already requested reinforcements from the Star Union. When the Machine Committee's fleet arrives, Special Target will be annihilated. The escaped Pura 11 had connected to the ship's comm system from the fleeing craft, issuing what seemed to be a victory declaration. Though it had lost the ship and its screamers, it had gained something more valuable, information about me. If it managed to rendezvous with the Star Union fleet and share what it knew, my safety would be severely compromised. Both the player and the Machine Committee would seek to capture and experiment on me. Of course, that's only if it manages to escape. Perhaps due to the numerous times it had transferred its consciousness into dummy bodies in such a short span, Pura 11 overlooked a crucial detail. It should have considered why I wasn't pursuing it. And more importantly, what awaited it outside. In the infinite darkness of space, a streak of red and white light emerged. Like a harbinger of doom, the ominously glowing star rapidly closed the distance between itself and the escape craft. It was heading straight for Pura 11's vessel. Your genetic code will be mine. Before it could finish speaking, the transmission was abruptly cut off. In the distance, a small explosion flared, a final burst of light created by the escape craft as it was pierced by the incoming meteor. Emerging from the explosion, a small dragon with crimson wings appeared, having consumed one of the Star Union's highest-ranking officials. I was going to take care of that, but it seems it's already done. PS 111's voice resonated through the speakers, and with it, the ship, which had been plummeting, stabilized. The long battle had finally come to an end. Chapter 246. Adha landed gracefully on top of the hangar. It seemed she had used her red armor when she rammed into Pura 11's craft, as there wasn't a single scratch on her body. Can. Grudge. Avenged. ZZZ, well done. Great elder. Me. Great leader. Did I play my role? ZZZZ, absolutely. Well done, little one. Well done. Success. That's a relief. Hearing the praises from me and number 26, she nodded proudly. It felt strange seeing her stand so dignified, especially when she used to hop around in joy. Though it seems like she still can't control her tail. I patted her head as her chubby tail swayed gently. ZZZZZZZ, what about Mother of the Sky? Amort. Took her on. Star C. Going there. Seems tough. ZZ, worth noting. Wolves don't die immediately when exposed to the vacuum of space, but unlike monstrous species like amorphs or metallic gremlins, they can't survive for long periods. If there's a well-maintained ship or a space with a suitable oxygen supply, like the nest I created, they can manage. However, hitching a ride on Adha's back into space is quite a burden. While we were talking, the hangar door closed on its own. I could feel the entire ship descending rapidly. PS-111, who had taken control of the ship, was landing it. It must be in the control room. Pira 11 had remotely controlled this massive ship, but that was only possible because it was a superior android. While PS-111 is certainly special, its performance doesn't match that of Pira 11. So, it must be piloting the ship while directly synchronized with the bridge. This is a Zax Alpha-class warship, so it should be in the upper central area. I led Adha and number 26 to the control room. When we arrived, just as I expected, PS-111 was there. It had removed the floor in the center of the room and was lying inside. The biological tissue covering its back had split open, revealing its spine, where hundreds of cables were densely connected. "You've arrived." It was staring blankly into space but acknowledged us when it noticed our presence. "You've come at the right time. There's something I need to check." "Is it about the Star Union support fleet? Can you check when the support request was sent?" Considering it was directly controlling this massive ship, I thought it could easily access the records. But contrary to my expectations, it gave a negative response. Pira 11 has strengthened the security system. In my current state, it's impossible to breach it. Is that so? However, if I enhance my mechanical modules, I believe I can bypass it. Enhance. You plan to use the ship's facilities, then? Precisely. This ship is equipped with various machinery and facilities for the production of screamers. It should be easy for it to modify the equipment to enhance itself. I thought about infiltrating the ship and extracting the data, but that method would be better. Given Pira 11's ruthless nature, who knows what might happen if the security system is forcibly deactivated. It's likely that it would have set up traps. While we were conversing, the ship, which had been descending steadily, successfully landed on the surface. Once we stepped outside, I saw a half-collapsed canyon in the distance. On the plains near the ship, the Galagons and Mother of the Sky were waiting for us. Although the Galagons were covered in wounds, not a single one of them had died. Ort, who stood at the forefront of the Galagons, bowed her head quietly towards Adha. The other Galagons behind her also bent their front legs and bowed their heads. Adha spread her wings wide and bowed her head slightly in return. Then, she released a psychic wave around her that I couldn't interpret. A ritual to mark the completion of her vengeance, perhaps. Galagons don't have a concept of funerals, but that doesn't mean they lack a sense of kinship. If a young blue Galagon dies, or an egg is destroyed, the entire group becomes enraged. In the game, Galagons were notorious for their ruthless vengeance. That made hunting them particularly challenging. If you hunted one alone, other Galagons would constantly show up. And here I am, traveling with a group of Galagons. The me in the game would have been shocked to see what I've become now. As I observed the dragon's ritual, Mother of the Sky approached me. That guy would have been thrilled to see this. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, that Galagon maniac. You two knew each other. Yes. After my clan disbanded, he went to great lengths to recruit me. The guy she referred to was a cold-blood ranker who was famous for his obsession with Galagons. He was ranked 18th and had even stolen Galagon eggs in an attempt to raise one. I wonder if he ended up in this world as well. Cold-bloods can grow rapidly until mid-game, but it becomes increasingly difficult afterward. They draw power from the Vortex ones, which makes them powerful early on, but the cost they must pay increases over time, making it harder. Considering the cost, survival wouldn't be easy. The Vortex ones are transcendent beings that only rankers encounter. The power they lend is formidable, but the price is equally immense. Failing to pay that price, it would lead to a fate worse than death. There's a chance he might have survived if he didn't follow the cultist path, but this world isn't a game. With the power of the Vortex ones, most immediate problems could be resolved, but I wonder if he could resist that temptation. Come to think of it, Jason also took down a cold-blood ranker. I remember when I turned the cult ranker, Jason, into a human-faced beast for interrogation. The ability to create metallic forms, which was later known as the Abyssal Hue, originally belonged to a cold-blood ranker. Jason said he didn't know what rank the cold-blood was. Cold-blood rankers generally rank low due to their inherent limitations. Jason, being the arrogant type, didn't care about those weaker than him. And that arrogance is why he lost to me. As I recall, the investigation into the cold-blood ranker was handled by another player who participated in the ranker hunt with Jason. So, it's no wonder he wasn't interested. While I was lost in thoughts of the deceased, Adha sent me a psychic wave. Great Elder. Me. Nest. Going to inform them. She's probably planning to inform the others in the nest about the situation. Just as I was about to tell her to do as she wished, PS 111, who had lagged behind, approached us. To improve the efficiency of controlling the ship, I need to upgrade my mechanical modules. For that, I require the metal stored in the nest. I will take you there. Thank you. With that, those who had tasks to complete headed back to the nest. Once they left, only number 26, Mother of the Sky, and I remained by the ship. Now then. I looked up at the ship, its front and side sections damaged. Not all problems have been resolved yet. We still don't know when the Star Union support fleet Pura 11 mentioned will arrive. But that's information I can only get once PS 111 is upgraded. For now, there's nothing I can do about it. There is, however, one thing I can do. The treasures Pura 11 had diligently gathered for Screamer production. It's time to inspect them. Wonder how many gene samples are stored on this ship. ZZZZZZZ, let's take a tour of the ship. Sure. A Screamer ship, huh? This wasn't in the game, but it's certainly interesting. I boarded the ship again with the others. If I'm lucky, I might discover a new unique trait synthesis formula here. Though I've already unlocked a formula that requires infection-related traits as ingredients. On the other hand, it's also possible there are too many samples of the same species, making it hard to acquire new traits. Still, even if that's the case, securing a large number of traits wouldn't be bad. With those pleasant thoughts in mind, I headed toward the area where the gene essence was stored. The closer I got, the stronger the alluring scent I had previously noticed became. Could it be that I'm more susceptible because I've expended a lot of energy in the intense battle? The combination of slight hunger and anticipation for what lies ahead lifted my spirits without me realizing it. The big one seems to be in a good mood. As expected of an amorph, ahem, indeed. Finally, I reached the place where the scent was most intense. I grabbed the thick iron door blocking the sweet aroma and tore it open. An overwhelmingly concentrated fragrance hit my auxiliary organs. Wow. The sight that unfolded behind the iron door was just as I had imagined. No, perhaps it even exceeded my imagination. Inside, hundreds of gene samples refined from various creatures were stored in freezers. Additionally, containers filled with the bodies of creatures from this and other planets greeted me. Wow. There's so much food. Number 26 remarked with awe from atop my head. As he said, this place was a treasure trove of genetic essence. The only downside was that many of the samples had leaked out of their freezers and shattered. It seemed the freezers had been damaged during the battle. But it wasn't a major problem. There were still plenty of intact samples left. Never mind that, let's start with the symbol of hunt. It had been a while since I had the chance to feast. Minus. On an unnamed planet, there exists a peculiar volcano. While it's massive enough to be called a supervolcano, it isn't extraordinarily large. There are larger volcanoes scattered across other planets. What makes this volcano truly unique isn't its size. The first reason is its color. On this planet, where snow and hail fall regardless of day or night, the volcano always remains black. It's strange, as nature doesn't avoid the volcano, yet it stays this way. The second reason is the energy. This volcano constantly emits an enormous amount of energy. It's so intense that creatures that feed on energy find it nearly impossible to leave. The strange thing is that the volcano wasn't always like this. It's only been a few decades since it transformed. At some point, the volcano began to transcend the laws of physics and nature. Near the base of the volcano lies a cave. At first glance, it appears to be a common cave, but once inside, it's far from simple. The long, maze-like tunnels wind deep into the volcano's core. As one ventures further into the volcano, the temperature rises to levels only the most resilient creatures can endure. As a result, the cave is teeming with predators native to this planet. For a long time, no outsider dared to enter this cave. Until recently. SHHH. A grotesque creature, a hybrid of mantis, wasp, and horsefly, collapsed with its head half severed. Standing before the fallen beast was a woman with black hair. Clad in a white bodysuit that accentuated her slender figure, she flicked the blood off a gleaming white blade extending from her wrist. How about your side? It's done. The one who responded was a being clad in a 2.5-meter tall metal suit. The suit, a mix of reinforced armor and a walker, resembled a heavily armed combat android. Is Captain Naren safe? I am unharmed, Si-hyun Yujin. Si-hyun Yujin, the woman in the white bodysuit, surveyed the survivors. Not many remained. 9. Huh. When they first set foot on this planet, there had been 60 of them. 10 were lost to wild animal attacks before even entering the volcano. While officially listed as missing, being alone on this harsh planet was tantamount to being dead. Despite losing 10 people before entering the volcano, what awaited them inside was an even more terrifying nightmare. Though the harsh cold was absent within the volcano, it teemed with dangerous creatures. The creature she had just slain, known as a Hellside Hornet, was a highly dangerous monster. Without her reinforced suit, the White Maiden, which morphs according to the wearer's imagination, even she couldn't have survived. And that's the 4th such encounter. We'll rest here for a bit. Got it. At her command, her subordinates collapsed onto the ground to rest. Understanding the toll the battle had taken on them, Si-hyun refrained from chastising them. Si-hyun approached her subordinate in charge of communications. How's the communication going? Is the weather anomaly resolved? It seems the weather anomaly has been resolved for now. However, it appears that the connection on the other side hasn't been fully restored. Is it an issue with the satellite radar? At that moment, Layla Chamberlain, the being in the metal suit, gestured for her. It seemed she had something to say privately. Keep trying, and let me know if you succeed. Understood. After giving the order, Si-hyun followed Layla to a spot slightly away from where the others were resting. You have something to say. Since we entered this place, we've already encountered 4 Hellside Hornets. No, with the one we just faced, that makes 5. I've never seen so many Hellside Hornets in my entire life. Yes. And don't forget about the ice horror we encountered. It killed 20 of our people. If you hadn't lured it away, we might have all been wiped out. Am I wrong? Due to severe physical damage, Layla was forced to rely on the life support systems of her suit for the rest of her life. Her vocal cords were completely destroyed, so she had to use a machine to speak. Although the machine's voice was devoid of emotion, Si-hyun could easily grasp Layla's feelings. Layla was questioning whether what they were doing was worth all this. There's an important relic here. We need to obtain it to achieve what we desire. That relic again. You do realize how ridiculous that sounds, right? Magical relics don't exist anywhere in this universe. Layla's family, TNC, owned the most colonized planets among the megacorps. They were well versed in the peculiar elements present on various planets. So Layla knew better than anyone that ancient relics or secret weapons left by fallen civilizations were nothing more than myths. You gave me a second chance. I can't die before achieving what I want. Especially not in a place like this. Si-hyun didn't respond immediately, maintaining a moment of silence. She understood Layla's thoughts, just as she knew what Min-suk, who was somewhere outside this planet, would be thinking. Normally, she would have thought the same. But Si-hyun had seen something. Reborn in a clone's body, she had reviewed not only the records left by Si-hyun but also those left by those around her. Among those records, she found a peculiar message from her former mentor, Bim-ho. It was something akin to a plan for the future. Si-hyun had never shared this discovery with anyone until now. BreyaWebnovel.com. But now was the time to reveal it. Si-hyun handed a small memory chip hidden within her suit to Layla. What's this? You'll understand once you check it. Without further questions, Layla inserted the chip into a panel on her wrist. Soon, a series of images stored in the chip appeared before her eyes. Is this a navigational chart? Yes. What are these next to it? Words. Sentences. They look like letters left by a primitive intelligent species. They are letters once used on Earth. Earth. The Earth I'm thinking of. Yes. The letters have become obsolete now. If I translate them, they mean this. Si-hyun took a deep breath before she began to speak. The ownership of 2 pieces of equipment, made by an unknown creator, is temporarily transferred from player Jung-woo to player Shin Bim-ho. The words coming from her mouth were in a language no one used anymore. As she spoke, a strange sense of familiarity washed over her, as if something deep inside her was resonating. Afterward, the ownership of the 2 pieces of equipment can only be obtained by someone who shares the blood of player Jung-woo. Player Shin Bim-ho is to safely keep these items until then. With those thoughts swirling in her mind, Si-hyun recited the next sentence. Chapter 247. The Amorph might be a fringe species in space survival, but it's not entirely awful from start to finish. The rewards after hunting down powerful NPCs or players. The thrill of discovering a new trait fusion formula I wasn't aware of. The sense of accomplishment when I incorporate a new trait into my hunting strategy. There's nothing more satisfying than experiencing these moments stack up like a snowball, bringing me closer to perfection. After Ascension, though, these moments of joy have become rarer. Most players began avoiding me. As I climbed higher in the game, the chances to discover new creatures and new traits decreased. Naturally, the sense of achievement also dwindled. But today, I got to feel that old excitement once more. I gazed at the faintly glowing translucent text box. Transcendent material list, contaminated worm host, tetanus vine, tooth fairy nest, human sacrifice, red acid. Transcendent material list, new. Insight, observer of terror, echo bug, psychic parasite pustule, mimic organ, not acquired. Psychic parasite pustule partially inherits the tetanus vine trait. Implants a psychic power pustule into the mind of an intelligent being. When it bursts, it deals psychic power damage to the surroundings, with a low chance of transferring the pustule to another intelligent being. Note, who comes up with these sadistic traits, anyway? Reaper's Maw inherits and enhances the jaw of the essence Reaper trait. Add saw blade teeth to your fangs. Note, eating is one of the most basic instincts. Jason Turningham's special ability and second brain trait have fused. Second he. Trait enhancement system engaged. Trait enhancement in progress. Evolving into Shapeshifter Dominator trait. Shapeshifter Dominator, when activated, amplifies the effects of traits that influence the thoughts of other beings. Applicable traits: mimic organ, parasite colony, psychic parasite pustule. Note, adapting the right mask for the situation is one of the key virtues of a superior hunter. One unique trait synthesis achieved, another unlocked, multiple new fusion traits acquired, a new nemesis token obtained, and several regular traits as well. After the hunt concluded, I was so engrossed in reviewing the flood of trait text boxes that I nearly forgot my hunger. I bit into one of the stored corpses while I carefully examined the text boxes. Let's start with the new nemesis token. The newly acquired nemesis token, Shapeshifter Dominator, was the result of specializing one of the perks I obtained after defeating Jason. I had acquired 3 perks from Jason in total. He originally had 1, and the other 2 were perks he had stolen from other players he killed. At the time, I only converted 1 into a trait. It was the Cold Blood Ranker's perk he had, the ability to summon a golden form, which I transformed into the Abyssal Hue. The reason I couldn't convert all 3 into Nemesis tokens was that I lacked the trait materials necessary to do so. Until now, whenever I wanted to steal and use another player's perk, I had to have a trait that matched the perk. A perk and a trait. You need both to obtain a Nemesis token. The other 2 perks, besides the Abyssal Hue, had been stored in my body in an incomplete state. Then, while raiding the Screamer's support ship, the opportunity arose. I acquired a large number of traits at once, and among them was a trait that matched one of the perks, allowing me to obtain a new Nemesis token. And I got a lot of regular traits too. Besides the traits displayed in the translucent text box I had just opened, I acquired many regular traits as well. Most of them were traits I already possessed or had detrimental effects like energy drain or diminutiveness, but that didn't matter. Useless traits could be used as materials for trait enhancement. Trait enhancement: when fusing traits through a special process, regular traits can be used as enhancement materials. Up to 10 materials can be used, and fused or unique traits cannot be used as materials. Applicable systems: unique trait synthesis system, Nemesis token system, unknown. This wouldn't have been possible without this system. If this were just a game, I wouldn't have bothered acquiring traits that were a disadvantage. Once you obtain a trait, you can't get rid of it until you use it as fusion material. However, thanks to the trait enhancement system, unlocked along with the cosmic monster type as a second stage perk of the transcendent system, even unnecessary traits could be somewhat useful. Though I can't just use any trait. The downside of trait enhancement is that it can only be used in conjunction with traits related to the transcendent system. As the tooltip for trait enhancement indicates, traits can only be consumed as materials when synthesizing unique traits or fusing Nemesis tokens. So, it's still risky to pick up traits with negative effects. It's better than nothing, though. I stared at the tooltip of the newly acquired Nemesis token. Shapeshifter Dominator. The two newly acquired fusion traits are ones I've used several times while playing the game. However, Shapeshifter Dominator is a trait I've never seen before, enhancing the effect of the mimic organ. I've never encountered a trait with such an effect. In the game, I was the only one who knew the fusion formula for the mimic organ, making it practically my unique trait. Additionally, there weren't any players who used Parasite Colony as effectively as I did. This trait feels tailor-made for me. All the Nemesis tokens I've obtained so far have had incredible performance. The tooltips for these traits are usually quite simple, which in a way, makes them even more exciting. I'll experiment with this slowly. I checked my altered body. Most of the regular traits I obtained from raiding the storage were used as materials for trait enhancement. So, my body didn't undergo a complete transformation as it sometimes does. The most significant change was in my jaw. The traits of the Hellside Hornet and the existing jaw of the Essence Reaper had fused into Reaper's Maw, altering the structure of my mouth. Previously, my lower jaw split into two, but now it no longer does. It's reverted to a form similar to the face I had before reaching the proto-adult stage, resembling the snout of a crocodile or boa constrictor. While the jaw structure has become simpler, two massive fangs have emerged from my lower jaw. These fangs are sharp and durable, akin to the bone blades that appear during the hunt. In terms of sturdiness, they're tougher than my head carapace. The fangs are lined with microscopic saw teeth, nearly as sharp as a monomolecular cutter. They can slice through almost anything, unless it's something with special properties, like the red armor of the Red Galagon. Thanks to these fangs designed for cutting and slicing, my method of claiming an enemy's head has also changed. Before, I would open my lower jaw wide and swallow the enemy whole. Now, I can simply sever the head with my fangs and claim it. And this helps with that. I slightly opened my mouth, extending my tongue. A dark, snail-like appendage wiggled out. Despite being inspired by a famous sci-fi creature, the Amorph originally doesn't have a tongue. It's only through acquiring special traits that I gained this feature. It's more of a tentacle than a tongue, really. According to the lore, the Amorph has taste buds widely distributed inside its mouth, so it doesn't need a tongue. Thus, the Amorph's tongue serves purposes other than tasting. For instance, it can snatch an enemy's head and swallow it, or it tickles. I gently licked number 26, who was eating a stored corpse beside me. My tongue absorbed all the bacteria and viruses clinging to its surface. On the surface of my tongue is the newly acquired infection-related trait, Microbe Storage Organ. It allows me to detoxify poisonous creatures or eliminate beneficial microorganisms from an opponent. What was that? Do it again. Okay. It tickles. That's fun. Number 26 gleamed, fascinated by the new sensation. Adha, who was also eating nearby, became curious. Me. Curious. Me too. Do it to me. Sure. As I complied, Adha's tail twitched as if she had been shocked. What is this? What is this? What is this? Isn't it fun? Interesting. Very. Interesting. Seeing them enjoy themselves like children made me happy as well. It's been a while since I've played so purely with them. Ever since I got Adha back, it's been nothing but battles, leaving no time to play with them. I should spend more time with them from now on. They're not just useful allies, they're my friends. As I had that thought, I made eye contact with Mother of the Sky. The griffin with the magnificent golden mane was watching us with a look of disgust. Do you want me to do it for you too? No, I'll pass. Perhaps due to the griffin form's higher resistance to poison, she firmly declined my offer. Aside from the changes to my jaw, the rest of my body hasn't undergone significant transformations. Technically, it did change but reverted after being consumed in trait enhancement. I also acquired traits like Contaminated Worm Host, which could alter my body, but they're currently inactive due to more advanced traits being in effect. I stopped licking number 26 and looked back at the text box. Having consumed so many traits, 2 unique trait synthesis formulas are currently unlocked. One was a fusion formula I had unlocked after defeating the Hellside Hornet, requiring infection-related and nest-related traits. This unique trait can be created immediately. I thought it would take much longer. I had anticipated that it would take considerable time to obtain the traits of the Hellside Hornet and Glacier Fiend. However, it turned out that the Screamer support ship had more samples than I expected. Especially the Hellside Hornet. Whether they had raided its habitat or not, there was an unusually large number of genetic samples available. And then there was the Glacier Fiend, an apex creature even rarer than the Hellside Hornet. Samples of its DNA, seemingly collected from another planet, were stored deep within the repository. It would have been nice if there were just a bit more. If the Amorph acquires the Glacier Fiend's trait of producing narcotic substances, it becomes the red acid trait, which transforms the Amorph's blood into a narcotic substance. Combining this with the Smictop trait results in a powerful fusion trait. It's extremely effective in mass combat. Had there been more samples of the Glacier Fiend, I could have acquired both the fusion and unique traits based on red acid, but unfortunately, that wasn't possible. It's uncertain whether Pira 11 had difficulty with the Glacier Fiend or simply couldn't locate its habitat, but there were only 2 samples of it. If there had been just 3, I could have obtained both the fusion and unique traits, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. Right now, the unique trait takes priority over the fusion trait. While evolving conditions are important, there's something even more critical. If I create just one more unique trait using the Transcendent system, my cosmic monster type will progress from stage 0 to stage 1. No matter how powerful the red acid-based fusion trait is, it can't compare to a unique trait. Besides, I'm curious about the effect of reaching stage 1 of the cosmic monster type. Having abandoned the fusion route, I've perfectly met the conditions for creating a unique trait using infection type and nest type traits. I've also balanced the number of traits to ensure the 2 type effects remain active, so I can create it at any time. Now, what should I do about this? Transcendence Material List, New. Insight, Watcher of Fear, Hallucination Worm, Mental Parasite Blister, Mimic Organ, not acquired. The newly opened fusion formula requires several psionic-related traits. I've obtained all but one of them. I can't acquire the Mimic Organ here. There are no samples on this Screamer support ship that could provide that trait, so I'll need to move elsewhere. It's about time to leave. Before she died, Pira 11 mentioned that she had requested support, meaning the Machine Council's fleet would arrive soon. Since one of their own has died, at least half of the High Council members will likely come after me. Perhaps even the Grandmaster player might join them. I could consider an ambush after lying in wait. But I'm not prepared enough yet. Fighting the Machine Council would essentially mean going to war with the Star Union. My power has grown, but it's not quite there yet. Not yet, anyway. To meet the type condition for evolving into the adult form, I'll need to move to a new location. A place not as barren as this, teeming with various species and creatures. There, I'll be able to grow significantly once again. I'll need to ask PS-111 to access the ship's logs. The one who brought back the necessary metals from the dragon's nest isn't here right now. It's currently modifying mechanical parts in the production line located next to the repository. It mentioned that the process would take a few hours to complete. In the meantime, I'm going to become an egg again. Please watch over me. The ones present here have seen me enter a cocoon multiple times. So, no one was surprised or asked questions. After notifying them, I left the repository and entered a nearby cargo hold. It's been a while. This is the place where I first opened my eyes in this world. Although, unlike back then, there isn't much cargo on this ship now, the atmosphere feels similar. Coiled up on top of the cargo hold, I reactivated the semi-transparent text box. Transcendence Material List, Contaminated Worm Host, Tetanus Vine, Tooth Fairy Nest, Human Sacrifice, Red Acid. Would you like to use the Transcendence system? This is the 4th time I've seen this prompt. As always, my answer is already decided. Chapter 248. What lay before me when I opened my eyes wasn't the cargo hold but a completely different place. Numerous green glass tubes surrounded me. The air was filled with a stinging chemical scent that made even my auxiliary organs tingle. The eerie atmosphere created by the glowing glass tubes made the place feel more like a catacomb from a distant future than a research facility. What is this? It was a place with such a strange and unsettling aura that I could confidently say I'd never seen anything like it in my entire life. Yet, somehow, it felt familiar. No, it was beyond familiarity. I even felt a sense of warmth and comfort. Almost like I had returned home. I crawled out from the glass tube. I remember now. I'd seen a vision when I entered Transcendence Stage 2 back on the cult's holy planet. This was the exact place I'd seen back then. How could I have forgotten this? It felt like someone had sealed and then unsealed my memories and thoughts. The notion of an unknown force manipulating my consciousness brought a surge of anxiety and fear. Stay calm. Based on my past experiences, it was highly likely that what I was seeing and feeling now was an illusion. In reality, I was probably still inside my cocoon, half liquidated. Let's look around. Rather than trembling in fear, it was better to do something, anything. Clinging to a fragile sense of calm, I began to crawl forward. The space around me was vast. It was so expansive that even my body, which stretched over dozens of meters, couldn't reach its end. The green glass tubes filled the area not just on the floor but also on the walls and ceiling. As I crawled past each tube, I gave them a cursory glance, but there was nothing inside. They were filled with some kind of green liquid of unknown purpose. Small terminals were attached to the glass tubes, but all were powered off. As I continued past the glass tubes, which exuded a foul stench, I saw a door. It was a heavily rusted iron door. I raised one of my combat limbs and gently pushed against it. At first, the door didn't budge, but gradually, it began to move. A bright light seeped through the gap. Eventually, the door opened wide, and a white light engulfed me. Where is this? When the light faded, I found myself in a space that was very familiar to me. My home. It was the door to the room I used to live in before I entered the world of space survival. I could hear someone speaking from inside. Almost entranced by the familiar voice, I reached for the doorknob with one of my small arms on my chest. The moment the door opened, and I came face to face with the person inside, I woke up. My physical senses returned, and I felt the warmth of a liquid enveloping my entire body. Something soft and wall-like seemed to be constraining me. What was that just now? Last time, I had forgotten, but this time I hadn't. Although it was as hazy as morning fog, the things I had just seen lingered in my mind. That strange facility filled with glass tubes and my old room. The former was a place I'd never seen before, while the latter was a space all too familiar to me. There was no apparent connection between the two. Is it my body's memory? My consciousness is human, but my body is that of the amorph. Perhaps the memories contained in the amorph's flesh had manifested as an illusion. If I consider the settings revealed after ascension, that might be possible. However, according to my memory, such a facility never appeared before or after ascension. After ascension, the place that appeared was where the amorph was first born, that is, the planet where the ancient ruins were located. I continued pondering inside the cocoon but couldn't figure out what the vision meant. But there's a clue. There was a common factor between the time I forgot and this time. Back then, it was when I entered Transcendent System Stage 2, and now. I had advanced my only unique traits through Transcendence, reaching a total of 4, thereby raising my cosmic monster type to Stage 1. This meant that the mysterious place I saw could be related to the Transcendence system. If I reach Stage 2 of the cosmic monster, perhaps something else will emerge. Since I still lacked enough information, there wasn't much point in spending time guessing. By now, my transformation had finished. I didn't know how much time had passed, but judging by how my liquidized body had solidified into a new form, my transformation was complete. I extended my combat limb and tore through the cocoon. Much like stabbing a soft-boiled egg with chopsticks, the fluid inside the cocoon spilled out in a rush. As I tore through the soft cocoon and emerged, the cold air brushed against my carapace. Taking in the fresh air, I began to inspect the changes in my body. The first unique trait I synthesized, perfect organism, transformed my body into the shape of a large, agile predator. The second, horizon of nightmares, gave me a heavy, massive image as it stored corrosive tendrils along my back. The third, organic evolution, was a trait that altered my body into a specific form, so it didn't cause any notable change to my overall appearance. So, what about the fourth unique trait I synthesized? In conclusion, just like with the first and second traits, my body changed quite a bit. My overall form retained the massive, snake-like shape typical of a semi-adult. I still moved using my combat limbs and winged arms instead of legs. However, the difference was that my body length had significantly decreased. I had previously reached nearly 40 meters, but now I barely surpassed 25 meters. While my lower body and tail had shortened considerably, my combat limbs had grown remarkably large instead. I pressed my combat limbs against the metallic floor and tried standing up. Before, my lower body and tail would drag along the ground, but not anymore. To put it simply, my current form resembled a spider with a long, thick tail attached to it. While the most noticeable change was in my overall shape, there were also alterations in specific areas. Starting with my head, the head carapace and its shape hadn't changed much. The traits created by the harvester's maw, the fangs, the 4 auxiliary organs under the jaw, the skull reminiscent of a crocodile or theropod dinosaur, the massive but incompletely grown horns, and the elegantly spread rear head carapace, remained intact. The real change was not in the head but in the neck area. The monster's tendrils, spread like a mane from the inner side of the head carapace to the neck, had received a significant upgrade. Currently, the monster's tendrils were tucked away inside small holes along the neck and the inside of the head carapace. Just as I had previously concealed the corrosive tendrils inside my carapace and let them emerge by tearing through a membrane when needed, the monster's tendrils had now adopted a similar form. This is an excellent change. Until now, my body had 2 major vulnerabilities: the auxiliary organs under my jaw and the monster's tendrils. While the auxiliary organs could be covered with a carapace when I used the symbol of the hunt, the monster's tendrils had limited protection. Because of this, formidable foes would often target the bundle of tendrils dangling from my neck. Now, I don't have to worry about that anymore. In the middle of battle, I can retract the monster's tendrils whenever necessary. I focused my strength on my neck, trying to extend the monster's tendrils. My neck stiffened as if preparing for a stretch, and the tendrils began to flow out from the small openings along the neck and the back of my head. Next to the monster's tendrils, the most significant change was in my winged arms. Since they were wings, they had always been larger and longer than the other combat limbs, but now they'd grown over a third longer than before. Additionally, the vertically folded carapace had developed a double-layered structure, making them more than twice as thick as the other limbs. The membrane now folds inside the carapace. When I moved my winged arms with the sensation of unfolding my wings, the folded carapace spread apart, and the membrane within gradually extended, much like a well-folded tent being opened. Along with the enlarged winged arms, my other combat limbs had also grown considerably. With added joints similar to the winged arms, I could now perform a broader range of movements than before. Apart from changes to my neck and arms, there was another small but significant modification. The blunt claws I previously had were gone. In their place were tiny biological tubes, like small pipes. If an average person saw me now, they'd faint on the spot. I looked intimidating before, but now, I seemed even more terrifying. I liked it. Now then, let's see how the text box has changed. Having checked all the changes to my body, I turned my attention to the text box. The Great Infectant, you are both one and many. You can select and enhance up to 3 traits each from the infection and nest reinforcement types. Enhancement targets. Infection type traits, unset, unset, unset. Nest type traits, unset, unset, unset. Caution, once all enhancement effects are set, you cannot assign effects to other traits until the enhanced traits are removed. P.S. From certain perspectives, an individual can become a collective. A new special status, mutating virus host, has been unlocked under organic evolution. Your cosmic monster, unique type has reached Stage 1. Stage 1 rewards have been activated. As expected. I had suspected as much when it mentioned traits related to infection and nest types. The newly synthesized unique trait was designed to amplify the effects of these 2 types, enhancing 3 traits each from the infection and nest types. Unlike other unique traits that would enhance an entire type across the board, this trait didn't show any signs of doing so. Does that mean it concentrates the effects even more? Considering that all the unique traits I've gained through the Transcendent system have been exceptional and beyond standard, my guess was likely correct. There's no need to set anything right away. Since it says I can't change it until the enhanced traits disappear, I need to be cautious and make my selections wisely. But there's something more important right now. Thanks to acquiring the Great Infectant, my cosmic monster type reached Stage 1. Considering that it required 4 unique traits, each incredibly difficult to obtain, I wondered what kind of reward awaited me. When I checked the reward message, my jaw dropped. The cosmic monster, unique, type has reached Stage 1. As a Stage 1 reward, the Essence Reinfiguration effect has been applied. Essence Reinfiguration, any types you have already unlocked and acquired are now unaffected by penalties. From now on, when you unlock new type information, any penalties will be reset for that type. P.S. Evolution is like a puzzle. Remember that it is always incomplete until it's finished. No way. The Stage 1 reward for the cosmic monster type was more astonishing than anything I had ever seen. Captain Nern, how much farther until we reach the artifact? We'll arrive soon. It's not far from here. That's a relief. Damn, it wasn't like this back when the artifact was stored. I have no idea what changed. Former Captain Nern of the Empire's mothership and Si-hyun Yujin were at the forefront of their traveling group, engaged in conversation. Watching her, Lila recalled the data chip she had seen earlier. When she first heard Si-hyun's words, Lila thought she'd lost her mind. Maybe she'd gone mad after living in Akira Yujin's shadow for too long. If she really had gone insane, that'd be easier to understand. Regardless of Si-hyun's mental state, the data she'd handed over didn't seem to be fabricated. In fact, there weren't that many visual images on the data chip, barely a dozen. However, the annotations, research papers, and supplementary notes attached to interpret the navigation charts and texts in the images were extensive. As the general manager of the T&C Special Trade Center, Lila received weekly reports on the city's overall affairs, so her knowledge and information were vast. To her, the contents of Si-hyun's data chip didn't seem like the ramblings of a mad woman or something hastily pieced together. Which only makes it all the more baffling. The records left by Byung-ho, the cultist who was supposedly Si-hyun's former master, concerned two weapons. One of them was merely an incomplete navigation chart and wasn't worth focusing on, but the other was different. About 60% of its details had been deciphered, and the weapon's effects were simply absurd. A weapon capable of selectively killing only certain organisms. According to Si-hyun's interpretation, the weapon fired a particle beam that was lethally effective against specific organic lifeforms, enabling mass slaughter. The weapon could be recalibrated to target different life forms by inputting new genetic data. In simple terms, it was like the Star Union's Gremlin torpedo Ninaweapon, but instead of targeting metals, it targeted living beings. Based on what Captain Nern had mentioned, many aspects of the weapon matched the descriptions in the records. They claimed that this single weapon wiped out the entire Outspiezer Legion. The problem is that nobody knows how this weapon works. When they first met, Nern had told her this. A mysterious crew member left the weapon behind and vanished, and nobody dared to use it. Despite its immense destructive power, no one understood how it worked or what powered it. Few people would dare to touch a weapon akin to a nano-nuclear bomb that selectively killed certain life forms. So, they decided to hide it deep within the volcano of this remote planet. There are too many incomprehensible elements. Even if I accept the weapon's existence as fact, there are still too many unresolved issues. If Si-hyun's father, Jong-woo, was the original owner of the weapon, why didn't he use it when fighting Akira? If he had, he wouldn't have lost his life or been stripped of his patriarchal position. And it's also unclear why this was left as a legacy for his descendants. If that were the case, Byung-ho should have personally handed the weapon over to Si-hyun. Instead, she's only now beginning to search for it, long after Jung-woo Yujin's death, under the guidance of someone entirely unrelated to her family, Captain Nern. Just what is Byung-ho thinking? Si-hyun Yujin, Captain Nern. It felt as though the upper echelons of the megacorps and the elites of the cult empire were being toyed with by Byung-ho. While Lila was lost in her complex thoughts, the group reached a dead end. This path is blocked, what's going on? There should be a passage here. The moment Nern finished speaking, Si-hyun transformed her arm into a blade and slashed at the wall. The cave wall collapsed in an instant, revealing a large, open space. What is this? Good heavens. There are so many corpses. As they shone their flashlights into the dim, hollow space, the first thing they saw were bodies. The carcasses of dangerous creatures they had encountered on their way here, along with unidentified organisms, were scattered everywhere. What kind of creature is this? I've never seen anything like it before. Si-hyun's subordinates grimaced at the sight of monsters with 8 sturdy legs mixed in among the corpses. These creatures, which they had never seen on their journey here, looked more mechanical than natural. Same with this one. These things seemed to have died recently. Unlike outside, it was relatively warm in this space. That meant it was an environment conducive to decomposition. Yet the corpses lying around here were still in the early stages of decay. Why had they fought and killed each other in this place despite the abundance of prey outside? Faced with this incomprehensible scene, the subordinates were bewildered. Was it like this the last time you were here? Of course not. There was nothing in this mountain when we were here. What do you think? Si-hyun. Lila called out, but Si-hyun didn't respond. As if entranced, she walked through the pile of corpses. Then, reaching into the mound of bodies in the far end of the cavern, she pulled something out. What is that? That's it. The artifact we buried in this chamber. Lila still reacted with suspicion, while Nern's face reflected a mix of astonishment and fear. They didn't understand what Si-hyun Yujin was seeing at that moment. Berk, the Forge of the Omniscient, has produced Abyssal Destroyer. Current owner, none. Temporary holder, Shin Byum-ho. Acquisition condition, genetic similarity to player Jungwoo. New user Si-hyun Yujin. Acquisition condition confirmed. Disabling barrier. Ownership of Abyssal Destroyer has transferred from player Shin Byum-ho to Si-hyun Yujin. The translucent text boxes felt as if they were directly piercing into her brain. Si-hyun couldn't comprehend even half of the contents displayed. But there was one thing she was certain of. This item would now serve a new master. Chapter 249. The Amorph incurs a penalty each time it acquires a new type. With every new type gained, the number of unique traits required for the next acquisition doubles. Once a penalty is incurred, there's no way to remove it, which means that, over time, it becomes increasingly difficult for the Amorph to acquire new types. That's why it needed to be cautious about which types to acquire first, and there were many times it had to collect unnecessary traits just to meet the quota. This alone was problematic, but the real issue lay elsewhere. It was the fact that the inherent drawback of unique traits synergized poorly with the type penalty. Unique skills or traits disappear if the character dies. If a character has just enough traits to avoid incurring a type penalty but then dies, both the unique traits and the type are lost. I've experienced losing a type multiple times, due to unique traits vanishing after I died. But now it's saying that the penalty is mitigated. Thanks to this, I could freely fuse the traits of the types I'd already acquired. Moreover, obtaining new types in the future became easier. The Special Defense Enhancement type and Internal Organ Enhancement type, which I'd already unlocked, still required 16 traits each. But since they were already unlocked, the number required wouldn't change. At least now I don't have to obsess over the numbers anymore. I could use the traits I had as materials for fusion or trait enhancement as much as I wanted. From now on, I could combine unique traits as long as I had the necessary materials. I should be able to meet the evolution conditions more quickly. I'll reach full maturity after obtaining just 5 more unique traits and 2 more types. Thanks to the reward from reaching stage 1 of the Cosmic Monster, the penalty is reset for any new types acquired from now on, making it easier to gain new ones. If I'm lucky, I might even acquire a new type before enhancing the ones I already have, like the Special Defense or Internal Organ types. For that, I need to leave this place. If this were a game, I'd head to a tougher hunting ground to obtain more unique traits, but that's not the case now. Combining unique traits has become much easier. Instead, it's more advantageous to go somewhere where I can collect the genetic essences of a wide variety of creatures. After confirming the type rewards, I dismissed the text box. By now, PS-111 should have finished its modifications. I should discuss with it when the best time to leave would be. Moving my combat arms, which had elongated like a spider's legs, and my winged arms, I stepped out of the cargo hold. On the way, I peeked into the storage area where the others were kept. Number 26, Mother of the Sky, and Adho were, as always, sleeping together. They must have fallen asleep while waiting for me. They must have been exhausted from the battle. I was about to leave when I noticed a red mark on Adhe's body. At first, I thought it might be a pattern from the red Galagon traits, but it looked different. Judging by the peeled scales, it seemed more like an impact wound. Could it be from the fight with Pura 11? I thought she was fine when the ship landed, but maybe I missed it since the wound wasn't that big. It should heal in about a day, even without a nest. TSK. I'll have to pay more attention next time. I quietly moved out of the storage area. After gaining the Great Infector trait and transforming, my body had become much lighter. Combined with the effect of the Silent Movement trait, the synergy was quite impressive. Despite my 25-meter size, I walked across the alloy floor with barely a sound. I silently moved toward the control room. Just as before, I found PS-111 connected by numerous cables to its spine. It seemed so focused on reading the ship's data that it didn't notice me approaching. PS-111. You have arrived. It only noticed me after I called out. The red camera lens, which had replaced its eyes, blinked and fixed its gaze on me. There have been significant changes to your form compared to the previous Amorph data. I've grown further. I see. What were you looking at that made you not notice me coming? At my question, PS-111 fell silent. The red camera lens that had been meeting my gaze wavered slightly. Although I knew it was a being mixed with machinery and biology, Its behavior right now is clearly one of agitation. Avoiding my gaze, it hesitated for a moment before finally speaking. Please look at this. The moment it finished speaking, a large hologram appeared in the center of the control room. It displayed a detailed mechanical structure and a 3D diagram of a creature with severed limbs. A mutant screamer. Yes. It's a blueprint left behind by Pura 11 for producing mutant screamers. The mechanical device appeared to be a life support system for the screamer, while the creature with severed limbs was a Hulk mutant used as its material. Next to the creature, there were a few lines of small text. From the words, it seemed to be genetic information of the creatures used as ingredients for the Hulk mutant. The text is all scrambled and hard to decipher. There were only a few recognizable words, the rest were garbled, as if corrupted. What's with the scrambled parts? The corrupted sections are protected by a defense system set up by an entity higher than Pura 11. I cannot bypass it. If it's someone above Pura 11, it could only be the Grand Sovereign. He must have placed the lock. As I was pondering what the scrambled text might contain, the holographic screen shifted. The newly displayed screen showed 2 video clips. I investigated to find out which organism or sentient being was responsible for my memories. As a result, I discovered the following records. As PS-111 finished speaking, the first video began playing. On the screen, reptilian humanoids with insect-like characteristics were shown inside multiple test tubes. Cold blood. Since they all looked identical, they seemed to be clones. There was a small nameplate starting with P under the test tube, but it passed by quickly. As the first video ended, the second one began. Dozens of what appeared to be cloned cold blood bodies lay on a cold metal plate. A machine approached and extracted the brains from the bodies, transferring them into a screamer machine behind them. Of the dozens of screamer machines, only one twitched and moved. The brain that activated the screamer machine had various mechanical chips implanted in it. All the others were discarded. A metal skull, imprinted with a single number, covered the half-mechanical brain. The number was 111. That's you. Yes, I was an experiment. Out of the many clones, I was the only successful one. Only then did I understand why PS-111 seemed so lost. It was because it had directly witnessed how it was created, and that had shocked it. It's understandable. This creature, a fusion of machine and biology, was in the process of developing a new sense of self. Declaring itself as special to Pura 11 was part of that transformation. But upon realizing it was no different from the ship, that sense of identity was deeply shaken. There are countless sci-fi works where AIs become so advanced that they awaken to self-awareness. Many characters struggle with whether they're just programmed machines or autonomous, independent beings. Although PS-111's case is a bit different, its dilemma resonates with the same theme. Who am I? It's a question about its essence. It's not a question I can answer, but... After a moment of thought, I spoke to it. Can you identify whose clone that cold blood is? Due to the defense system, it's impossible to verify fully. Then let's start there. What do you mean? I mean finding out who that cold blood clone is that makes up your brain. I'll help you. If you're into monsters or creatures, you inevitably encounter various sci-fi works. My suggestion came from those inspirations. Subconsciously, it probably sees that brain as being closest to its essence. PS-111 has a significant amount of sea demon genetics, enough to even receive psychic powers from number 26. It also carries genes from other creatures. Yet, it's most interested in the owner of that brain, the cold blood clone. It must have concluded that this part heavily influences its own thoughts. Tracking the original clone's footsteps wouldn't be a bad idea. If it learns about a significant part of what constitutes itself, it might gain a clearer understanding of itself. Though I'm not certain. In reality, I'm not an expert in biology or neuroscience. I have no idea how its consciousness and thoughts are structured or how they function. I merely based my suggestion on what I've seen in various media. Fortunately, my proposal seemed to intrigue it. Its camera lens zoomed in on me, indicating its interest. After a moment, it gave a small nod. Your suggestion, a morph, is an intriguing approach. I will seriously consider it. That's good to hear. As always, it remained expressionless, but it seemed satisfied with our conversation. Sending a signal through the cables connected to its spine, it deactivated the hologram and casually spoke. Is there anything you need? If you tell me, I'll do anything you ask. His words reminded me of the reason I came to the control room. Check when Pura 11 sent a support request and what kind of response she received. A support request. If a support fleet is coming, we need to know when they'll arrive. Please wait a moment. At my request, PS-111 closed its eyes and began searching through the ship's computer. The spine that had emerged from its back quivered, and light flickered every time electrical signals traveled through the multiple cables connected to it. The support request was made 5 weeks ago. It stated that Pura 11 had sustained significant damage, hindering her ability to carry out her mission and making communication difficult. 5 weeks ago. What does it say about the cause of the damage? Strangely, there is no record of that part. It appears Pura 11 concealed it. The androids of the Mechanical Committee possess advanced intelligence and can deceive others with ease. But to go as far as hiding such details from the highest-ranking members, especially when requesting support, doesn't make much sense. There were no further communications from Pura 11 until 32 hours ago when another support request was sent. That was during the battle at the Galagon nest. Yes. She attached the data that was transmitted before the Screamer's communication was cut off. Since I hadn't used my unique abilities back then, they shouldn't know the full extent of my power. However, they did learn about my relationship with the Galagon, specifically, that I have allies. When they come to fight me next, they'll be well prepared. Has there been any response from their side? Please wait a moment. Once again, PS-111 checked the records stored in the computer. Unlike outgoing messages, incoming ones were more difficult to access due to the defense system, and this time, it took longer. About 30 minutes passed. PS-111's eyes suddenly snapped open. This is bad, Amorph. 3 weeks ago, Europa 2 departed with a support fleet en route to this planet. What? The elite fleets of Nemi V, Redtail Vidi, and Aero X are part of the support fleet. My heart sank upon hearing that. If they set out 3 weeks ago, they'll be here within a few days at most. They could even arrive as early as tomorrow. It's possible that a reconnaissance fleet under the support fleet could reach here by tomorrow. I urgently asked PS-111. How long do you think it will take? Assuming they're using engines equivalent to this ship's, the Vanguard will arrive in 18 hours. Check if this ship is capable of launching. Understood. This time, I can't use the Nightmare Horizon. This ship is massive, and it takes quite some time to corrode it. If the enemy arrives early, I won't be able to respond. Therefore, I need to leave the control of the ship to PS-111 and prepare for the worst-case scenario myself. After giving the order, I rushed to the storage room to wake the others. Big baby, are you done already? What is it? What is it? What is it? What's with that look? Oh, this must be your new form. ZZZZZZZZZZZ. That's not what's important right now. Number 26 asked if my growth was complete. Adha was groggy from just waking up, and Mother of the Sky seemed startled by my unfamiliar appearance. I quickly explained the situation to them. 4 of the High Counselors are coming here. ZZZZZZZZZZ. The Grand Sovereign might join them too. Mother of the Sky quickly grasped the gravity of my words, her amber eyes widening. What will you do? If even a player is involved, it'll be nearly impossible for us to win. ZZZZZZZZZ. We won't fight this time. I might manage against 2 High Counselors, but 4 is too much. And if a player is involved, it's a guaranteed defeat. Even if I manage to survive, I'll lose everyone here, including the Galagons we just gained. Losing them once was enough. I turned my gaze to Adha. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Go to the nest and gather all the Galagons. Bellow kin together leave. Are you? ZZZZZZZZ. Yes. It's time to move out. At last, it's time to leave this frozen planet. Chapter 250. A single spaceship was orbiting the snow-white planet, drifting like a snowball. It belonged to Si-hyun Yujin, who was secretly working to overthrow the usurper of the Yujin family, Akira Yujin. Currently, Min-suk Yujin, Si-hyun's butler, was acting as the ship's captain in her stead since she had descended to the planet. In Si-hyun's office, Min-suk was handling several tasks on her behalf. He took his eyes off the terminal pad and pressed his temples with his fingers. A report he had received a few hours ago was weighing heavily on him. They found the artifact, huh? Contact had been made by the exploration team that had lost communication due to radio interference until now. They reported that Si-hyun had recovered the artifacts yesterday and was currently returning to the exploration vessel. He had thought her pursuit of these artifacts was nothing more than a wild goose chase, but it turned out that he was mistaken. We still can't be certain. When exploring new planets, objects that appear to be ancient relics are sometimes discovered. However, none of these artifacts ever possessed the incredible power that the media often glorified. Most were simply unique objects that ended up in museums or auction houses. So, it was most likely that what Si-hyun had found would turn out to be just another item you'd see in an auction. If that were the case, his master would have wasted a considerable amount of time on a pointless endeavor. Who would have thought cloning would have this kind of side effect? While the Megacorp prohibits the production of clones, the Star Union does not. Just as Megacorp modifies its employees into Hulk mutants, the Star Union uses clones as raw material for their bio-weapon soldiers. It could be said that their clone manufacturing technology is quite advanced. However, there are drawbacks to the Star Union's cloning technology, including issues with memory transfer, brain abnormalities, and mental instability. Si-hyun Yujin tried to minimize these side effects by applying Megacorp's genetic modification technology and the psychic power techniques she learned from a cult during her childhood. In other words, the clone Si-hyun, who currently resides beneath that white star, is essentially a being that incorporates the most advanced technologies from the most intelligent beings in this universe. Yet, despite that, the fact that she was engrossed in some ridiculous legend or myth left Min-suk feeling exasperated. If I use what she left behind. Min-suk took out an item from his inner pocket. The small, lighter-sized remote in his hand was something the original Si-hyun Yujin had left for him. If the clone ever deviated from the predetermined plan, this would be the tool to stop her. Sigh. He sighed, fiddling with the remote, when suddenly the terminal pad lit up. A call was coming from the situation room. This is Min-suk. What's going on? Sir, we have an emergency. The satellite positioned at the system's outer rim has detected a massive warp energy signature. What? Min-suk shot up from his seat at the urgency in his subordinate's voice. Where is it coming from? Can you identify it? According to the energy analysis, there's a 78% chance that it's the elite fleet of the Star Union. Judging by the energy flow, the Vanguard should arrive within a few hours. Damn it. What about Jax 1? Why haven't we received any contact from them? I'll check right away. Cursing under his breath, Min-suk hurriedly left the office. As he sprinted toward the situation room, he barked out another command to his subordinate. That can wait. For now, bringing Lady Si-hyun back is the top priority. Track the exploration team's route and input the coordinates. Send a transport vessel to that location. Understood. Understood. Si-hyun had found the artifacts yesterday and was on her way back. Considering the distance, it would take at least a week, even if she hurried. If the Star Union catches her, we're done for. Thanks to numerous modifications, this ship was considerably armed, but it wasn't enough to face the elite fleet. It couldn't even guarantee victory against the elite fleet's reconnaissance unit. By the time Min-suk reached the situation room, a small spacecraft had already been launched toward the White Star. Minus. ZZZZZ, anything left? In the now empty cavern, I asked Adha. She circled the cavern on her strong, deer-like legs. That was the last one, no more left. Knowing that the elite fleet was on its way, we had hurriedly begun preparations to leave. While PS-111 inspected the ship, Adha and I headed to the Galagon nest. Upon arriving, we went around waking all the Galagons and explained the situation. We told them that an incredibly powerful enemy was coming and that we needed to escape. I expected the process of convincing them to take quite some time, so I purposely moved quickly, but surprisingly, the Galagons offered little resistance. The moment they heard Adha's words, they immediately began preparing to leave. From that point, everything proceeded smoothly. The green and white Galagons carried the young blue Galagons on their backs and flew to the ship. I, along with the black Galagon, Hamort, transported the blue Galagons as well. After moving the Galagons, the next task was to transport the eggs. More than 50 eggs were stored within the dragon's nest. Galagon eggs cannot hatch if exposed to cold temperatures for too long, so Hamort and I, who were the largest and fastest flyers, took on the task of moving them. 6 hours had passed since we began the repeated trips back and forth, carrying the eggs. Now, the only ones left were the 7 eggs I currently held. I extended all my eroding tendrils, each gripping an egg tightly, while I used the smaller arms on my chest to clutch the remaining one. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ since this is the last trip. Let's check everywhere else too. Adha expressed her gratitude as I carefully checked to ensure that no eggs were left behind. Once a Galagon hatches from these eggs and mature, it would become an additional force. If we were lucky, one might even grow into a red Galagon, just like Adha. Although I was only being thorough to avoid missing even a single egg, Adha seemed to misunderstand, thinking I was being considerate because I cared deeply for the Galagons. No need to correct her. After leaving the egg storage nest, we decided to split up and check the surrounding caverns. This area, being where the eggs were stored, was located in the deepest part of the dragon's nest. Aside from the indirect impressions I'd sensed through the nest, this was my first time visiting this place in person. I walked along the natural pathway formed by hardened minerals, eggs still in my grasp. Entering a nearby cave chamber, I found only traces of where eggs had once been stored. It was clear that Ham-Ort had already been here. Let's check just one more spot before heading out. The final destination was a massive cavern located deeper inside than the egg storage room. As I rounded the bend in the passageway, a brilliant light struck my eyes. What is this? The light was emanating from the depths of the large cavern. As I stepped inside, I was stunned. There was a sea of jewels. This is incredible. It was exactly what you'd expect from the Galagons, who were modeled after Western dragons. This vast collection of precious metals clearly marked this place as Odgrad's lair. Galagons do have a fondness for rare minerals. In myths, dragons hoard jewels out of greed, but the Galagons collect them for a slightly different reason. They prefer metals with unique properties, such as moonsilver, which amplifies psychic power, or novametal, a key material used in the cores of the Thunder God or Imperial warships. Their tendency to hoard these materials likely stems from their vulnerability to energy shortages during their youth, which developed into a kind of compulsion. Anyway, the metals in Odgrad's lair were all unrefined chunks of rare metals. Some still contained significant amounts of energy, while others had been drained, turning into ordinary gemstones. If I weren't an amorph, I'd be losing my mind right now. Even selling just half of these metals would be enough to buy 2 or 3 planets. After admiring the sea of jewels for a moment, I picked up a few pieces of metal. Mother of the Sky might need these. The place we were heading to after leaving this planet was quite important for both Mother of the Sky and me. For me, it was about evolution, and for her, it was about ascending to the next stage of deification. We'll need all the resources we can get until we achieve our goal. Since I was already carrying the eggs, I couldn't pick up many. I used the pincers on my tail to firmly grip the metal chunks. Alright, time to head to, Just as I was about to leave, something caught my eye. Nestled among the jewels was a diamond-shaped stone. What's that? The other metals were still rough and unrefined, but this stone was different. It looked exceptionally smooth, as if it had been meticulously crafted. Its surface was covered with tiny, intricate letters and patterns. A stele. I picked up the diamond-shaped stone, or rather, the stele. No matter how I looked at it, it appeared to be something created by a civilization. Why would Odgrad have an item like this? Thinking about its artificial nature, I recalled something else. The ring that concealed emotions which Odgrad had possessed. That, too, wasn't something a Galagon would typically have. I'll have to check it out once I return to the ship. Odgrad's ring was currently stored in the sample preservation area on the ship. He had taken it off when consuming a genetic sample and hadn't paid any further attention to it since. With the diamond-shaped stele in hand, I exited the cavern. As I did, I heard the sound of Adha running from the passage ahead. ZZZZ, Adha. Big Elder, something's wrong. ZZ, what is it? Little Elder has come to this place. Number 26 had arrived. Just as I was about to ask what she meant, a familiar wave touched the tendrils of my monstrous form. Big bro. Your friend says to hurry and come out. It was unmistakably the psychic wave of number 26. It had come near the dragon's nest. Why all of a sudden? Something bad had clearly happened. I hurried out of the nest with Adha. As soon as we emerged, what greeted us was a massive hunk of steel, a colossal warship hovering over the cliffs surrounding the nest. It was the Screamer support vessel, a Jax Alpha-class battleship seized from Pier 11. Don't tell me. There was only one reason PS-111 would urgently bring the ship all the way here, The scouting fleet of the Star Union's elite task force had entered this star system. They arrived faster than expected. PS-111 had estimated that the Vanguard would take about 18 hours to arrive, but that prediction was completely off. Great Elder. The Great Elder must have intervened. It was clear he took some measures to ensure the elite fleet moved as quickly as possible. Adha and I flew up and boarded the ship. As we entered the hangar, the green Galagons greeted us. ZZZZZZZZZZ, deliver these eggs to number 26. Understood. After handing over the items we had collected to the green Galagons, I quickly rushed to the command room. Upon entering, I found PS-111, linked to the ship, waiting alongside Mother of the Sky. What's going on? The scouting unit entered the star system sooner than I anticipated. They will encircle this planet within 10 minutes. Anything else unusual? This time, it was Mother of the Sky who answered instead of PS-111. They brought a warp finder. A warp finder is a device that can trace where someone has jumped by tracking the residual energy left behind for a short period. Even if we entered faster than light travel right now, they would catch up to us in no time. How large is the enemy force? 30 X-10 class medium destroyers, 3 ZAX-5 class fast battleships, and numerous patrol ships. That's quite a sizable force for a scouting unit. They're clearly well prepared to finish me off. It would take quite a while to annihilate them all. If we deployed all the Galagons at our disposal, it wouldn't be impossible to obliterate this scouting fleet. The problem, however, was the time it would take. They arrived a third of the time sooner than PS-111 had estimated. It's highly possible the elite fleet might also arrive much earlier than anticipated. Maybe that scouting fleet is just meant to stall for time. They knew that I could corrode and take control of ships. They might even suspect that I've already gained spaceflight capabilities. If this were a game, that's the assumption they would make. Thus, they might have assigned the warp finder to the scouting fleet, intending to lure me into a fight. I wouldn't know which ship carries the warp finder, so I would have to destroy all of them to avoid being tracked. And that would naturally cause a delay. Even if I managed to annihilate the enemy unit and escape afterward, if they gained enough time to track my traces, that alone would be beneficial for them. A warp finder can trace movements for up to 30 minutes. The elite fleet would likely arrive around that same time frame. In other words, we need to destroy the enemy fleet within 30 minutes if we're to escape their pursuit. Normally, that's how it would have to be. However, there's no PS-111, the Genius Mutant Screamer, on their side. And they have no idea how many Galagons are packed aboard this ship. I looked at PS-111. They brought a warp finder, you said. Yes. Then, can you identify which ships have them? I've confirmed that there are 5 ships carrying the device. Let me know before we engage with them. Understood. You're not. Mother of the Sky, realizing the implication of my question, reacted in shock. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZz. We have no choice. If we don't deal with them here, it'll only get worse. I've spent my life on the run, always chased by time. So battles with time limits aren't anything new to me. I'll finish this within 25 minutes, at most. The target is the 5 ships carrying the warp finders. If I destroy them within 25 minutes, it's my victory. With that in mind, I left the command room. This will be the final battle before we leave this planet.